Today's guest is Luke Urick of beautiful Built, Montana. And today we're going to talk about the Montana Veteran Project, commonly known as MVP. Luke is going to talk about his several tours in the global war on terror and living in this beautiful state of Montana and everything that it means to him. But what he's truly passionate about are veterans and helping them. This is going to be an amazing episode that's going to inspire everybody to support this organization. Stand by.
69 foot pursuit. Stop! Sir! Stop!
Welcome, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Me as well.
Yeah.
I like that intro. That's motivating.
we had to get your blood pumping a little bit, get you thinking about
in the field,
something fun.
Yes, sir.
That's
you
kind
nailed
of the whole point. Hey, thanks. I'm excited about this. We met, I think, when I was running for sheriff. We met at a gun show, and it must have been like 2018.
Yeah, your dad was sitting next to us in the booth. I was actually just thinking about Bill the other day, and. He gave me because of that event, we were selling rifle raffle tickets at the gun show, raising money for the Montana Vet Program. And just by chance, your dad was trying to get rid of some stuff that he had accumulated over the years, and struck up a conversation with him. And then over the next 2 days, we became like besties. He gave me a World War I bayonet. A European bayonet. I don't remember the country of origin. I still have it in my gun safe today. I actually looked at it today.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
just getting kind of ready for this, and because your dad was, a hell of a man.
Yeah.
And yes, that would have been the introduction that your dad provided us both with. So yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And it was funny because I know that the Montana Vet Program had been around prior to that, but I didn't really know anything about it. And so then I started learning about it, and we were talking, and it was interesting. And that was like 2000. That had to have been spring, I think, of 2000.
I think you're right. 2018. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
In the spring. Yeah.
Yeah, is when I first met you, and then we've kind of kept in touch ever since.
Yep.
And various things have come up, and so we've had conversations, and you've had some interesting projects going on. So you'll kind of fill me in. And then I've just been a really big fan of everything that you do for our veterans. And so I've been following you on social media.
Thank you.
Checking out your stuff. And then what's really cool, and before we get too far into this, that I thought was amazing was I can't believe how many people that are in my office that I work with, and they'll be like selling your raffle tickets or something to raise money, or they're participants. They know exactly what's going on. And I'm like, holy cow, this is so cool.
Right.
And so there's this really natural reach that you're getting, and I think that's really neat too. So before we dive into all that stuff that I know you want to talk about, I kind of want to hear about your background. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I'm from Belt, just right outside Great Falls here. My family is from Belt, so I did a little bit of time over in Oregon and Washington growing up as a kid, but ultimately moved back and graduated from Belt High School in, 2001, and ended up moving away from Belt for a little bit and came back, and then I think I was 20 at the time that my wife and I now, she got pregnant, and so we were actually teen parents. So, Jill's 18 at the time, senior in high school, actually walks across the stage 8 months pregnant. And so then the rodeo begun after that, what I mean? So life got serious and everything changed for us. And obviously in 2001, obviously with 9/11, that changed everything too. And the 9/11 piece, there was a calling that a lot of folks felt to do something and help, but then also knowing that I had the responsibility of, my wife and my son to take care of, it was then the catalyst to join the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marine Corps 2003, August. Went to boot camp, did that piece, School of Infantry after that, and then got pushed out to the fleet. And, now it's, where are we at? So that would have been 2003. So now we're getting, I think my first deployment was 2004, June. So then that June, my wife and I actually got married. 2 weeks later, I ship off and say goodbye to my wife and Hayden, my son, who's now 20. He's going to be 21 here soon, and he's a little stud as well. And now I actually have 3 children. So I've got Hayden, awesome. Addison, and Vanny. Addison's, she's got a basketball game tonight. She's the starting point guard for Belt, and she's a hell of a basketball player as well. And then I have Vanny, my youngest. She's 14, so she's plays basketball as well, and she's just made it to nationals in DECA, and both of my daughters made it to nationals in DECA, and so I've got my little pride of Lions, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so but that first deployment, having to say goodbye to my family, and
how many kids did you have at that time? 1. So just one.
Just Hayden, at that time. So, and being really naive, being 21 at the time and not knowing what to expect, and having only been in the Marine Corps for, I think, 8 months before we deploy.
Wow.
And, at that time, Iraq and Afghanistan. I only went to Iraq. I did 3 deployments to Iraq, but obviously Iraq was, a rodeo in of itself, as well as Afghanistan. And so not knowing what to expect, that was really challenging, saying goodbye and then going over and then operating constantly with a broken heart.
Yeah.
Really just not getting to be around my wife and my kids and my son at the time. And so, but yeah, and then that first deployment for us, I ended up actually being pulled. I would have been part of a mortars platoon with Weapons Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, and they took a handful of us, and we ended up actually being responsible for and training the Iraqi National Guardsmen. And so we had our own separate compound away from the rest of the unit, the battalion. And so we were taking these guys, getting them trained up. Fortunately, I had a tactical language course a couple months prior, so I was able to speak some broken Arabic and manage my way through, you know what I mean, being a 21-year-old, and now I'm instructing.
So how do you say front sight in Arabic?
Don't do that to me, Jesse.
I'm just teasing.
But yeah, so then being a 21-year-old and getting to train, a range of males from 18 to guys in their 40s who are all looking at me then like wondering if I know what I'm even talking about. Right. You know what I mean? They've been living a pretty rough life, obviously, under the Saddam Hussein regime, and then looking at me as this kind of bright-eyed kid who doesn't know
right
left from right, really. There was a difference in experience there, but then also being responsible for now taking these guys out on patrol and getting them trained up and having that communication piece, and ultimately taking that group of individuals, having a battle space for Operation Phantom Fury, the retaking of Fallujah.
Right.
So now we're running through the city online with Marines, a little bit of Army, a little bit of this and that. And my little battle space, I get to do it with Iraqi National Guardsmen.
Right. And is it just you, or do you have anybody?
No, there was 12 of us.
12
of us. But I would have been a Lance Corporal at that time. I was meritoriously promoted to Lance Corporal right before we took off on the deployment. So then I get to be one of the squad leaders.
So what deployment is this?
My first one.
So this is in your first one, where you're, okay. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I haven't got the.
So you're
second or third.
So you have all that responsibility on your very first deployment.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much did you learn about leadership?
So much. So, man, that's a great question. I currently speak to the Airman Leadership School and lecture them. They've got classes. They're about a month long, and I have my own little instruction block, and I've also been the class mentor for them on Mounts from Air Force Base. And that is a big part of it that I reference back to is just dynamic leadership in dynamic situations, right? And that was pretty dynamic, right? Being
Absolutely.
able to shoot, move, communicate with a group of individuals that you don't share the same language with, which that's a common mission. I mean, that's like typically kind of a SF mission that I'm familiar with, right?
Absolutely. Going
into, foreign countries and getting the locals trained up and then operating with them. So we really did have that kind of, that mission profile for that first deployment for my section. And with not much training on how to do it, you know what I mean? Like, hey, team, these are your guys. Let's get them ready, spun up, and then let's go. And then before you know it, Fallujah kicks off, and now we got to have a little bit of this battle space is your guys' responsibility.
Let's just dive into this a little bit because I see multiple facets of issues here. It's not just a language barrier. You have a language barrier. You're going to have, they carry different weapons.
Yep.
You're also going to have cultural issues.
Yep.
They're going to have different cultural issues, which is going to create them to, one of the biggest issues I've always seen in training people, especially to kill other people,
yep,
is that their culture will dictate a lot about how they're going to deal with that event psychologically, what's permissive in their culture, what's not permissive in their culture.
100%.
And you can't make any assumptions about that.
Right.
But if you have a language barrier, that's a difficult conversation to have with language barrier.
Yep.
The mindset conversation. So how did you navigate all of those little intricacies to get there?
Well, I'll add something to that because you're talking about the culture piece, right? And so this is the big piece that I talk about when I'm talking to the airmen, right? Is it's different for you and I. 9/11 happens. We're all motivated, right? America just took a big shot. We got a black eye. We're pissed off, right? Let's get motivated and let's go rock and roll and, pay them back. Let's give them a black eye. Motivated. Now you're taking the group that I'm leading, the Iraqi National Guardsmen, who have just more or less been rounded up to come fight with us, and there's zero buy-in.
Right.
Right? And this isn't me blaming them, not blaming the mission that I had at the time. It's just the facts of the matter at that moment that these folks had just been living with a boot on their neck for decades, and there's no reason for them really to believe anything that we're saying. They don't have that fighter culture inside of them. In fact, I would say they're more flight than fight,
right? Of
which we experience quite frequently. The competency piece, you talked about weapons, they would constantly just ND into the dirt, negligent discharge, just, and that kind of stuff, you're on a patrol and one of your own guys just sends one into the dirt and it's an AK, so it sounds like enemy fire and just scares the shit out of you, but that's a common kind of occurring thing. So that piece really, that was something that had to be calculated into it. And you asked me how I get through that kind of the leadership piece of all of that was getting to know them. Yeah. Like establishing a relationship with each one of the guys in my team and finding out what made them tick. Like, what do you got going on at home? Like, how many kids do you have? What did you do? What do you want out of this? You know what I mean? Sharing kind of the motivation that I had, sharing the motivation that they had, and getting them to buy into who I was and that I was genuine and authentic, and this is our mission. Let's go get it done for one another. And whether or not that hit the mark, you know what I mean, for all of them, there was definitely high levels of frustration, and there were times in combat in which I would say they didn't perform up to par. Right. A couple of them. And that's kind of a thing too, right? Where you've got 10 or 12 guys that you're running through and one or two of them really got it, and they want to get into it and they're they're willing to help, and then for the rest of them, they're just more or less in trace. And
well, it's not like it's not like they went through selection, right?
Right. 100%.
They didn't go through selection and weed out all the people with a weak mindset.
100%.
They're just like, hey, you're all in.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I want to talk about this a little bit later because my respect for the Vietnam vet is very, very high. I have to assume that maybe this is what it kind of felt like when you were running in combat with guys that were drafted.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That kind of hit or miss if you're going to get guys who are going to be productive or who aren't going to be able to, freeze, flight, fight is a natural progression. And a lot of guys freeze. A lot of guys flight. Not everybody gets to fight, and so, yeah, it definitely made it a little bit difficult.
I mean, even when you're dealing with men and women who wanted to be there, those issues still occur.
Yes.
They have certain things going on, something happens, something triggers something in them, and they freeze or flight. And sometimes they are 100% for a while, and then all of a sudden that happens.
Yeah.
And so even in people who chose to be there, that can happen. But I can't imagine what it's like with people who are like, hey, this is what you're doing. You don't got a choice.
Right.
Pick up this AK and do what you got to do.
Well, and then there 100%. But then there's a level of contention that kind of grew in our, specific to my operation, what we were doing and the, how it was, the different components of what we were doing. We're pushing through the city. Marines are dying. Off the top of my head, I think 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, I think we took 34 casualties on that deployment. And a fair portion of them came from, Operation Phantom Fury. So as we're pushing through. So, I mean, you're hearing chatter, you're getting reports, Marines are dying, you're carrying Marines, you're packing guys out, doing medevacs, things of that nature. So we're bleeding for this country. And then we've got, our Iraqis who are with us, and then they don't want to bleed. Like they don't want to be the ones kicking the door in. They don't want to be the ones taking fire or sending fire back. And so that then even creates kind of a level of contention, which again, I'm 21 years old at the time, and my level of frustration or my frustration threshold was probably quite a bit lower than it is now.
Right.
But let's just say there were times where I got pretty pissed off and had to help them through the door. Right. If you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. You mean you had to push them through the door first?
Yeah, occasionally.
yeah, exactly. You know. No, I can't even imagine what that environment had to be like. I'm super fascinated by this. So, I've talked to some people who did some special forces stuff, and that was kind of their primary mission.
Yeah.
And so, but the difference was all of their, after they go to basic, all of their advanced training and everything is all based on that mission.
Exactly.
It's all based like, hey, these are all the weapon systems you're going to have to know, this stuff you're going to have to understand. And a lot of them actually get a full-on linguistic school because of that. Like they don't get like a hat. It's like, no, you will be fluent in Arabic before you go, or whatever the tribal language that you're going to. And then they go to all these instructional schools that break everything down.
Yep.
And that's years and years and years. And then they go on that mission.
Yeah, they got a pipeline to get them ready. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I have to assume that somewhere in there, there's psychology built into it as well, like understanding reading people and understanding how to lead people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Of which the Marine Corps does a fantastic job, I would argue the best leaders in the world. So you've got some of that from boot camp and School of Infantry, but practical application of that at that point in my life hadn't had a whole lot. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it definitely set the bar high, and the learning curve was great, right?
I mean, I still am an active firearms instructor, which is not like what you were doing, which is you're teaching them some stuff and then you're going into combat. I get to teach people and then go to the EOC.
Right.
So and which is really hard to do, but having to lead them into combat like that, and then knowing that there's no way you're able to give them everything that you need to give them.
or do I have everything that I need too? You know, at that time, you know, like you're kind of. I mean, we were fortunate that we had. I think just off the top of my head, I think that deployment was 8 months. I think about month 6 is when we went into Fallujah, so we had some time in country to get to work together a little bit. Which, I mean, it was better than nothing. Right. So, I mean, I'll take it.
You make the best of whatever you got, right? It's like, here it is.
Just rock and roll, and that's what we got to do. So, but all in all, I will say I didn't lose anybody that deployment from my team and none of the Iraqis that were with us. So I was fortunate with that. And I don't think you could ask for more than that. So
no, you can't.
So
in
super blessed.
Any profession where you carry a gun for a living, and if you can get through any time period of it, and that's the saying, then that's good. That's a win. That's a huge win.
Yeah. In fact, the only time, the one story, I guess we did have a pretty good injury. We're sitting there and we'd gone to like our forward line where everybody's kind of holding up and waiting for everybody to get online before we push again. And we're sitting there and we're out in the courtyard in one of the houses and everybody's kind of taking a break. And somehow air had got called in and what we suspected was a 500-pound JDAM was dropped on the building just kitty corner to us, like across the block, just boom. And didn't hear it coming. We're sitting in the city, and so we've got air support frequently coming through, whether it's rotary wing or fast movers, whatever it may be. Shit's blown up all over, and they're getting there. So all we can hear is this, and then boom, it blows, and I get stuck gazing up into the sky, looking up at this plume of dust, and as everything's just blowing up and going sky high, and I kind of get like I said, I kind of got stuck in this little trance, and I'm staring at it, and all of a sudden, we've got debris starts falling down and chunks of concrete are falling around us, and I look back and nobody else is in the courtyard. Everybody else has taken cover already. They're not the dumbass like myself who's stuck out there watching it. And so at that point, start falling. So I finally get back into the building. We'll come to find out one of our Iraqis did take a big chunk of debris right to his head. So we had to get him medevac and get him out. But he did live through it. So that was a little bit of a...
That's a, and that's the thing people don't, there's so many things that if you've never served in combat, which I haven't, but from the stories that I've heard, a lot of them on this podcast, and things I've heard, there's all these factors that people don't think about. Like everybody thinks about, well, don't get shot, or don't get blown up. And if you just break it down to those simple things, everyone thinks, okay, well, I can not get shot, not get blown up, but giant pieces of concrete falling from the sky, I mean. That's like a really unavoidable problem that, well, there's not much you can do about it.
100%. And one of the guys that I was with, kind of came up with this little joke because you'd just be sitting there and you'd hear zingers, like rounds would just pop off and maybe ricochet or somebody's shooting, half a mile away and, suppressing something and rounds, stray rounds. And you'd hear them zip by your head and crack by it. And he would always say, Urick, that had your name on it. Urick going by it. Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you that's kind of that fog of war component, where sometimes shit happens.
Oh, absolutely. No, for sure. So talk to me real quick about being in Fallujah. This is 2004.
Right.
So this is like a really, really violent time. There. I mean, this is back before the surge and all the other stuff where it was the Wild West on steroids.
It was Humvees with sandbags in the bottom because we didn't have we didn't have
no armor yet, right?
No armor on the Humvees just yet, and so it was that learning curve, right? And IEDs started to become an issue around that time, and then really, I think the war became really known for the IED component. But yeah, it got pretty violent. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, and the reason I want to dive into this component is because when we start talking about the Montana Vet Program, I want to to have some relation to this.
Okay.
So, I mean, how many engagements are you getting in during this time with your team?
In Fallujah or?
Yeah. No, in Fallujah. In your first deployment.
I don't know. Daily, obviously.
Daily.
I mean, so daily, sometimes hourly,
Okay.
and then it kind of depends on, because you're pushing through or clearing buildings, right? So if you run into bad guys or not, or you're trying to get across a main street and
Right.
there's opposition on the other side, and so now we all end up online. We've got air support coming in and knocking down bad guys, and you've got Humvees rolling up and tanks rocking and rolling, and so then you get stuck there for maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's
Right.
2 hours, and that's that whole component where we got stuck in that courtyard when we had the JDIM dropped on us or near us, sitting there waiting for other folks to kind of get up online. And then you've got, if you've got a firefight to your right flank and it's your guys over there, you're still kind of involved in that, because anything that gets flushed out to you, squirts out the sides, essentially, then you're engaging, or maybe you're taking inadvertent fire from,
Absolutely.
So yeah, pretty.
Talk to me about the whole. I take it this is the first time in your life that you're engaging human beings,
Right.
Like this is the first time. So
Right.
so talk to me about that. What for you? What was that like? What was that? Did training just kind of take over and it was just like happening automatically, or was it? Did you have struggles with that?
I wouldn't say I had struggles with it, but there is that kind of oh shit moment where you do go through freeze, flight, fight, like you do get somewhat held up, like, oh shit. And then it's boom. And now it's fight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then once you get into fight mode and kind of get into what I've called in the past is maybe the most pure feeling I've ever felt in my life. And I think that sometimes you'll hear people talk about this. I've heard special operations talk about it frequently, and guys who've done a lot of combat, is that you're literally living on the edge at that moment, and there's really nothing more. I've heard people say, and I've said it myself, is that is when life is really simple.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that might seem counterintuitive, but the objective is kill those guys, stay alive, and take care of your buds. And that does boil down to a pretty simple, pure emotion that is intoxic, that I think does create kind of that adrenaline rush and that addiction sometimes for some folks to want to keep living in that feeling. And it hints like guys coming back and get motorcycles and want to fly 200 miles an hour down the interstate. You know what I mean? Because you're on that edge. And so the piece that I think that I would get at that is just that pure feeling of being in the moment, living. Because quite frequently, even when we're out in the backcountry and we're talking to, the vets that are joining us, is being in the moment, right? Being present. Combat forces you into being present, right?
Yeah.
There's no contemplation of what I had for breakfast. I'm not anxious about what so-and-so thinks about me. I don't have a phone to answer. A little bit of forward thought. Obviously, I want to get to this point and get from there. Then I want to do this, and I need to suppress that so that he can get to this. And where is that person at? But it does really force you just into the moment. And being in the present moment is a really beautiful thing if you can hold on to it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I can see that. The reason I asked that question is, I think, like major media and, the whatever people read, they think it's this thing where, we send these soldiers to war. They don't want to kill. They're basically forced to because of what they do. And or then the other side is, they're just all, like the poor Vietnam people who were called baby killers and all this terrible stuff. And it's neither of those things.
Right.
It's, I've been in a law enforcement engagement, and all those things you said are true. Right. Everything you said is true. That in that moment, it is so simple.
Right.
There's nothing else you can think about but that engagement of that person, because it's either you or them.
Right.
And then it's funny too, because then I bought a Harley. No, seriously, it's I mean, but that's all true.
Yeah,
there's
100%.
there's an addiction, there's an intoxication to that, because unless you've been there, in correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not so much the act of shooting somebody that is the high. It's what you said. It's that there's no other choices in the moment.
Yeah.
In a world full of like 10,000 choices at everything you do.
Right.
But there's nothing else. And it keys, I think I'm not a scientist, but I think it's like your midbrain kicking in and taking over. And it's a super powerful thing.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say too, that I experienced kind of in the moment and, being in that combat piece is love, actually. Ironic as that, or paradoxical as that might sound, but the guys that are to the left and to the right, and obviously we hear people talk about this all the time, and camaraderie, which again plays into the Montana Vet program, is I think a really big component here, especially for males in the United States, right? Western culture, telling one another that we love each other isn't something that we do a lot. You know what I mean? But in those moments, like that's the only people you care about. And it's really special to you to make sure that you're doing your job well and keeping the guy to the left and to the right of you alive and doing your best for them. You know what I mean? Because you know that they're going to do their best for you. And you can't let your guys down.
I really like that description. And I like how honest you are about it, because that is true. I mean, we don't, what do you want to, whatever the latest buzzword is, toxic masculinity or all that other stuff that's out there, that bunch of BS.
Bullshit.
But what it is about is this, is like, you're right. You don't take another man's life because you hate that person. Most of the time, you don't even know who that person is.
Yeah, half the time you don't even see them.
Right.
Yeah.
In military, law enforcement, or even in a civilian self-defense role, most of the time, you don't really know who they are.
Right.
It could be a shadow with a weapon. That's all you see.
Right.
You don't care. You don't know. You don't recognize their skin color, their race, their sexual orientation, all this hyperbole that's out there.
Right.
You don't see any of that. But what you know is that if I don't do A, B, and C, people I love and care about, your fellow soldiers in your case, or your family, or whatever it is, fellow law enforcement officers, they could be injured.
Yep. They
could be killed. And that becomes unacceptable at that moment because you have love for these people.
Yeah.
And you're not going to let that happen.
Right.
And I'm really glad you said that, because I think that's probably one of the most truest narratives of what, people in our United States military, what they really stand for and who they really are.
Yeah.
It's not, and everybody's like always, and nothing against our country. Please don't take it this way.
No.
Everyone's they're over there fighting for the stars and stripes. And it's like, no, when you break it down to its most simplest thing in that very moment,
right.
That might be the purpose that got them to go to basic and got them on the ship.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I don't see anybody thinking about that. I see them thinking about how much they care about those individuals and, things like that. So I really appreciate that. Like, I think that's a really, really raw and honest perspective about what it really is. And I get frustrated because I think there's two things happening. One is, like you said, it's hard for, and I'm going to use the term men just because the highest statistic of people involved in combat are men.
Yep.
Just as a general, it can't be women.
And that's okay, because that's factual.
Right.
So we can say that.
Right. But I'm just going to use as an example that men, a lot of people out there think that there's different things that define them that really doesn't. And it's actually a basic love for people. If we ever have a mother and she were to, strangle someone to death with a coat hanger to protect her children, we'd all be like, well, that's just a mother protecting her children.
Yeah.
That's love.
Yeah. Yes.
Totally socially acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that that love and that nurturing,
Yep.
to steal a kind of a quasi-female term, that love and nurturing is the same in men. It's there. It's
100%
it's instinctual.
Yeah, and I refer to it as like the John Wayneization of the men in our country, right? Where my grandpa loved John Wayne, right? My grandpa was my John Wayne when I was growing up, like big, tall, tough cowboy, and John Wayne was the same thing. And the idea when it came to emotions, right? Like there was just zero emotions for men, right? Like if you feel away, you got a problem, you just go punch the other guy, knock him out, and then ride off into the sunset, and everything is good, Unfortunately, I don't think that does a lot for us, right? Like being able to understand, specifically for men that I'm kind of talking about right now, and this is kind of the stuff that we like to cover when we're out there on our trips, is that not understanding our emotions, right? Because essentially, if I'm not going to take care of the way that I feel about something, ultimately what's going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of contributing factors that build up inside of me. I never hit that release valve, right? They build up and then I explode, and then I'm rageful, angry, and then that's going to be how I handle that problem. I don't find that to be productive, right? If we are more familiar and better with our emotions and just being able to, like, for example, I don't find it to be I don't find you to not be a man if you can talk about your emotions and the way that you're feeling, right? And being able to communicate that to one another, right? We don't do a very good job of that. And so then there's this notion that comes to men that, we're just over there doing it and killing for whether it's pleasure or whatever, this notion of us being, maybe a baby killer or something along those lines. And I don't think that does a whole lot for the men in our country. And ultimately, and I see this all the time, because when we've got guys with us, guys and gals in the backcountry with us, frequently guys want to talk. They want to let some of the stuff off their chest. They want to let us know how they feel and how they're handling it. And it's not really that they've had the safe space to do it in the past. You know what I mean? Because as a boy growing up, you got to be tough. And a lot of times that's actually pushed by the mom, toughen up, let's go. You got to be tough. And then their female counterpart that they're trying to date, or maybe they're married to, they don't want them to be tough all the time. They want them to be able to talk about their emotions too. So this is kind of a paradoxical situation, which it's not just the males that contribute to this. This is the females as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when these guys and gals are with us in the backcountry, they have that safe space to be able to communicate some of the things that are bothering them, have bothered them. And this isn't just, your typical infantrymen or what have you. I mean, I'm talking hardened killers who have been on multiple deployments and in the special operations community. This is the commission level officers. It's everybody. Frequently I have individuals who want to come up and talk to me, and this is kind of the role of a therapist, 100%, right? And that's a big piece that we advocate for too, is that if you do have these things and they're built up inside of you and you want to get something off your chest, right, instead of blowing up at your wife, find a counselor, right, and talk with them. And that in of itself takes a little bit of work too, right? Because you're not always going to find the person that you resonate with. Right. And if you're not good at communicating or talking about your feelings, it could take you a minute to be able to establish a rapport in which you feel safe to let some of the stuff off your chest. But it really is important to let some of that stuff go. And just simply talking about it gives it a way out. Right. You know what I mean? And I learned here recently, one of our new team leaders, her name is Caitlin, was talking to me about journaling. I have always thought that journaling was lame and for women, right? Right. Forgive me for being no masculine, and that was just my opinion. I always thought it was lame. Like, I'm not going to write something down that's stupid. Until the very first time that I did it, I was just pissed off for whatever reason, just like raging inside. And I'm sure that you've probably felt like that before, where inside you're just nothing but fire and rage. Oh, yeah. And it's really hard for you not to just let that out on the first person who happens to hit your tripwire. You know what I mean? So here I am freaking out inside and just being pissed off. And, you know, whatever. Okay, Caitlin told me to journal. I'm going to try it. So literally just start writing everything that comes to my head. And there's a lot of profanity, you know, and there's maybe a little bit of, you know, there's some chaos on that page for sure, for certain. As soon as I got done writing everything down on that page, and then, you know, her instructions were just go burn it, I felt better.
Right.
Like I had literally just like letting the air out of a tire. Like, there's just zero pressure inside me anymore. And that's the same thing that talking about stuff can do.
I agree. And I look at it as like it takes the power away from that emotion. You know, if you talk about something or you write it or you do whatever, I wanted to go back to something you said, though, not to totally jump back, but something you said, and you were talking about, you know, these men who've been in combat and they need to talk about it. They need to work through their stuff. And then you talked about their upbringing, and you're like, well, you know, moms and dads and all these people teach boys they got to be tough, and then they carry this bravado through their life, kind of. Well, one of the things that I think is really frustrating too is these. You go take like a personality type test.
Myers-Briggs.
All the different DISC, all that. There's so many different versions of it. And it tells you kind of like, and if you're really honest about it, which sometimes I think when I was younger, I probably wasn't, but now I'm probably way more honest about what I write. But you do it, you get a result. And I always worry like people falsely label themselves through that stuff. You know, I mean, I've heard things like, oh, you'll do something like, oh, you have psychopathic traits. Well, I'm a psychopath. No, didn't say that. It says psychopathic traits.
Right.
And, you know, I think the other thing people fail to do through a counselor is go talk to someone who's a real professional in that and say, yeah, you served in the United States military or in law enforcement or some combat-oriented profession.
Or you could be a nurse. You could be a firefighter. You could be a stay-at-home mom. Like literally there's some heavy shit that happens.
But what I'm saying, though, is you may choose that profession because the so-called, if you really diagnose like and go through all that psychopath, if you just have some of the traits, what it might mean is that you can compartmentalize real well. Is that you cannot let your emotions get to you under stress.
Which is really useful.
It is.
Yes, it's very useful. Yeah, and there's a spectrum, right? From empathy to psychopathology, right? Like on that spectrum, we all fall on that somewhere, right? And maybe you're a little further to the right, you're further to the left, right? Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're a psychopath. Like some people are completely born without the capability to empathize 100%. But yeah, I mean, everybody, there's a little bit of, like you kind of alluded to it already, when you speak with a counselor about it, they can help you maybe understand a little bit more.
But that's why you do that.
Yeah. And there's a tendency for folks to identify heavily with language or verbiage, you know what I mean? So just like you just said, well, psychopathic traits. Oh, I'm a psychopath.
Exactly.
That's it. That's what I am. It's like
they take this one component of a word that they know.
Right.
Or that they've heard about, and they're like, oh, that they label it. And where I was going to go with this is like, if I had one piece of advice that I could offer people is when you're young, especially when you're young. I mean, and for a male, probably till you're 35. Yeah, you may be in a career, you may be in a job, or you may just be curious and you go take a personality test or whatever. First of all, be honest. Because I guarantee you, if you're super honest, it's going to come out right on, you know, it likely will come out where you think it should. And then the other thing is, don't get too wrapped up in what it is.
Right.
Because especially, and this is what I wanted to kind of dive into with you being so young in combat, and I can't speak for what it's like to be a woman because I don't know. But I know my wife is a like 100% different woman than what I met. She's not the same woman. We have 3 children. Both of us are on different careers now in our life. We're both just life experiences. Everything, it's changed who she is. Right. She's still amazing. She's still the person. She's still the persona of the person that I love and cherish, but she's different.
Yep.
And then, so you take this personality test, and if you label yourself, And what I think a lot of people do is then they build a life around that label.
Yep.
Because they're like, well, I might as well own who I am. You know, all that, be real, be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, be careful with that when you're young.
Right.
Because you don't really even know who you are. And so where I was kind of going to come back to you on that point is, so you're out there, you're training all these guys who you have language barriers, cultural barriers, all this stuff with. And I mean, it had to be hard, one, to get out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other thing that I could see would be a struggle is by the time you come back from that first deployment, seeing as much combat as you saw, and here's something I want to add too. I wasn't there, so I can't speak for this, but I can imagine seeing the combat not from your lens, but also seeing the combat from their lens, because you're hearing things, right? You're hearing, well, this war has had this effect on my family, so it creates that empathy that you couldn't avoid on that spectrum. To have both the getting close to the psychopathic empathy from having to do what you have to do, but then also being really far on the empathy spectrum because who you were with.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, how do you know, when you came back from that first deployment, did you have a little bit of that, like, okay, who am I now?
That's a good question. So you hit on something like kind of, I don't know, like the insecurity piece and like leading all these guys. That was a big thing for sure. Like, do I have what it takes to lead all these guys, and am I doing it right? You know, yeah, that definitely was something that you had to get over every single day. You know what I mean?
So how did you overcome that? Because that's huge.
There was a job to be done, and just go get it done. You know, I mean, it really is as simple as that. You know, unfortunately, like, this is the job. I want to get home. And I've always got the incentive that my wife and my son are back home, and none of you are going to keep me from my wife and my children.
Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. If you love a farm-to-table experience as much as I do, then you have to go to the Roadhouse Diner. The local McCafferty Ranch beef served on every burger. Try my personal favorite, Death by Bacon, today. Central Avenue Meats gets their beef and pork exclusively from a local producer, McCafferty Ranch. Go see them at 422 Central Avenue in Great Falls, and always support your local rancher. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems in Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems in Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. I'll just be honest with you. I'm in those situations, I feel like all the time in my life. Something new comes up, I don't know what to do, and I just fake it.
Yeah. Yeah, fake it till you make it. 100%.
I do.
Man.
I say to myself, okay, God has given me this role right now, and he's told me I need to do this, and he's given me authority to do this. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. And I think there's a level of wisdom, though, that comes with just saying that. Like, I don't know, but you know what? I'm here with you, and we're going to go fight, and we're going to go that way, because that's the way that we need to go, and we're going to go solve it. Yeah. And maybe we die trying, but we tried. And I think that there's quite a bit of wisdom in just not knowing and being okay, secure enough to say that you don't know. That might run counterintuitive to what some people say about leadership, right? Like, but I personally believe that sometimes you just don't know. But
I would argue that most leaders, if they're really honest with themselves,
100%.
90% of the situations they go into, they don't know.
Right.
I think it's about having integrity and being true to yourself.
Right.
And just saying, and I also think there's a level of faith there. That you either have faith in whatever it is yourself or whatever God is you believe in, and you're like, this will get me through, and I'm going to go.
Right.
But I mean, I think that what you said is pretty profound, and here's a struggle I have. You fake it till you make it, right? And then when you come out on the other side, I always feel a little bit like a fraud.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's how MVP this whole time has been. I felt like you're just starting something and let's go. I'm trying to convince people, hey, come on this trip with us, man. Like you're going to get something out of this, I promise. But I'm having faith in the trip and the magic that occurs on them. But I'm also not a guy who's got 20 years of experience. I don't have a PhD.
Or magic.
I'm not a magician, right? Like, so I am kind of faking it until you make it. And I've heard that before too from, different leaders and whatnot, that there is that component where you do feel like a fraud. Yeah. And I think I think personally that's natural. I think that's a part of it. And I think that just stepping into it, lean into it. And I'm not saying lean into being a fraud. I'm just leaning into that feeling that sometimes I got to go make this and let's wait for the magic to happen.
Well, my fundamental belief in God tells me this. It's like, okay, if you believe and you have faith and you lean into it, he'll take care of the rest. The problem is because it's him, not me. I think that's why I feel like a fraud at the end. It's because I'm like the manly side of me that's all material and worldly goes, I didn't do that. I know I didn't do that. But then I'm like, oh yeah, God did that. That's how I got through that situation.
Right.
And so you do that, but I mean, it just feels weird. And I can't imagine what it would be like to go through, for example, and for the most part in my world, we're not going into daily combat. Yeah. Okay, there is a sense of that in my other job in my organization that's imminent, but that's not the day-to-day. I can't imagine being in the situation where you are in this position, and you're having to cycle through all this at literally breakneck speed, and then lean into it, have all this faith, do all these things, and then that weird feeling that you'd have when it was over, like, how did I pull all that off? Yeah,
and then just being you're 21 years old, and you're not super confident in yourself,
right?
You know what I mean?
Oh
like,
yeah,
you're kind of. I mean, for me, anyways, like self-belief wasn't there.
No,
you know what I mean? And being insecure absolutely was there, and messing up quite frequently, and not having a whole lot of mentorship at that time to know that it's okay to mess up. So then when you do mess up, you just beat yourself up really harshly.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
But then there's also something to that too, like that I'm going to beat myself up so that I can get better, and I'm gonna just get better. You know, I don't really have another. And again, for me, I've got this pressure and this motivation to get home to my wife and to my son. And at this time in my life, I'm so naive that I'm thinking, I just got to get through this one deployment and I'm done. You know, like I got to go home, and I'm, you know, kind of like that Vietnam, like get through your year and you're done. Like that's just me being a dumbass at the time. And I'll never forget, like 18, so, you know, getting done with our first deployment and just being like, we made it. Like, holy shit. Like, fuck, we get to go home, Freedom Bird. Like, I'm so excited. And then it's like, all right, team, we're going to be coming back in 7 months. Like,
that's how fast your turnaround was?
I think it was 7 or 8 months. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. It was like, oh.
So how fast did you realize you were going to have that fast of a turnaround?
I can't remember if it was, this was like almost 20 years ago. I can't remember because, so we get done with our first deployment, right? And I was fortunate enough that I got to have a sniper team come hang out with us at our forward operating base, and they were, you know, getting their rifles zeroed, and they were just the sexiest guys of all time. You know what I mean? Like just cool kit. Like they had a cool mission. There was just two of them. They're doing their own thing. Like nobody told them what to do. Like the whole notion of just getting out there and taking care of, you know, bad guys to make sure that the patrols were safe. Like that just called to me. And so as soon as we get done with our first deployment and we're getting ready, you know, because now we've got a couple weeks to transition while the next unit comes in, we're doing left seat, right seat, and then they take over, and then we're slowly integrating out of country. So then, you know, requests for sniper in-dock into the sniper platoon for 3rd Battalion, 1st Marine come down, and I instantly raised my hand. Like I remember standing in that hallway, and my entire platoon was in there, and they're like, who wants to go to sniper school or to the in-dock? And like, it wasn't me. My hand just went up. I remember like looking at my hand, like it had already.
Whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, it had already gone up.
I do that all the time, and then I'm like, I didn't even ask my wife.
Yeah, I know.
She always gets really mad at me, like, we're gonna have a conversation about this, and I'm like, I don't know, honey. My hand went up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't me, babe. I swear. It was my body. But I remember, so they call for it, and my hand goes up, and it's like, all right, here we go. So we get back, and man, I wish I had better, if I remember better, but I think it was like within 3 weeks of us getting back, we did our leave, get back, and then the first in-docked into the sniper platoon for the entire battalion kicks off. And now you've got, you know, you wouldn't know any of these names, but they're just legends who were in our battalion sniper platoon. And off the top of my head, I think every single one of them left Fallujah with a Purple Heart, and they really achieved some really positive things over there. And so just these giants of Marines, and now we get to go in-dock through this week-long screener to see if we've got what it takes to even hang with these guys and be in the platoon. And they just let us have it. We started with like 65 people, and I think it got pared down to like 6 of us by the end of it. And they just hammered us. And they were, you know, I assume it would have been like, you know, for the guys who were dealing with Vietnam instructors who had, you know, maybe during peacetime, but you still had that hangover of the Vietnam you know, soldiers that were still in and just beating guys up and had that experience. And so only 6 of us made it from that. And then I think it was 2 weeks later that I was in sniper school. My rifle score was high enough, GT and PT score was high enough, so they sent me to sniper school. And so it was just kind of this dream come true, kind of. I had always talked about sniper school, didn't think it would ever happen, but I'm like literally sitting, you know, Camp Pendleton.
What weapon system are you guys running for sniper rifles back then?
M40A3, 700, Remington 700, huge battle axe, heavy. Yeah. We were fortunate that we were able to run with Leupold Mark IVs for a glass, which had been purchased by the platoon before us. So we were running with something a little bit different than everybody else was. Everybody else had Unurtles and then went to Schmidt and Bender, which later we got to the Schmidt and Benders. But for that first my first deployment with the sniper platoon, which would have been my second deployment, we had the M40A3s.
Okay. So interesting. So what is the hardest part about the whole sniper school? What is the thing that like?
So sniper school itself.
Yeah. What is the thing that you're just like? Because I was a sniper on our SWAT team for a while, and I had little things that used to get in my head because I loved being a sniper, but the psychology of it is very difficult. And so I'm just curious from your perspective. I was like, what was the thing that kind of like got inside your own space when you were doing it?
So like when you say psychology, you're talking about like taking life, that psychology, or the psychology of hitting a target?
No, I'm literally talking about you're in sniper school, you're being evaluated, you're being tested, you have to make calls or you're probably out, right? So there's there's pressure.
Yeah.
So in the Marine Corps sniper school, what was the thing that you were like, okay, I have to pay attention to this. What am I, because I mean, we all have that little anxiety point where we're like, okay, this is tough for me.
Well, and then the guys again who are running Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at that time, like these guys have been in books. These guys ended up graduate or like moving on to a lot of them MARSOC, Special Operations, and just incredible warriors, like just Marines. You know what I mean? So there is that kind of component too. Like,
absolutely.
Again, at that time, maybe I'm in the Marine Corps for a year and a half, and a lot of times. Before that, it was my understanding that you had to be an NCO to even go to the school, which I was fortunate because after Fallujah, I was combat meritoriously promoted to corporal for all the things I had done during that deployment. And so
you were meritoriously promoted to lance corporal before you went.
Yeah.
And then you were meritoriously promoted. So what got you promoted to both those? Is it an overall thing or is it like one act? Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So for the lance corporal piece, you got to go up in front of a board. So then you got all the first sergeant or sergeant majors.
Okay.
Sergeant major and first sergeants, and so you got to go up in front of them and you got to answer a bunch of questions. And I think confidence, one of the first sergeants at the time, and again, consider that these guys have been in for anywhere from 16 to 20 years, and they're hardened Marines, and I've been in for. At that time, like 8 months. And so they're really scary dudes. You know what I mean? And one of them asked me, I think the last question was, if you could change anything in the Marine Corps, what would you change? And I mean, this sounds silly, but I literally didn't have an answer for it. So I was like, well, the gravy in the chow hall sucks. So, could we get some new gravy? And they're just kind of scoffed me off, like, get the hell out of here, kind of laughing, and kicked me out. And I think that honestly, that confidence piece kind of helped me with that. Right. And then, I just run around Fallujah with the team that I had. So I didn't see that coming actually.
Yeah,
like they
awesome.
just held a formation for me one day, and we're in the middle of Fallujah, and Urick, get up here. And then I get the blood stripe. Everybody gets to, punch on my chevrons and, beat my thighs up and eat the shit out of me. So,
it's a great experience. Huh?
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry. So back to the sniper school. What was the thing that gave you the most anxiety?
Am I good enough?
Yeah.
I guess. Another thing too that actually ended up being a little bit difficult for me that I didn't find out till after is that I'm actually right hand dominant and left eye dominant. So I made it through Marine Corps Scout Sniper School shooting with my non-dominant eye.
Oh, nice.
And still do. And so that, like, having learned that afterwards,
you were like,
wow, this changes some things. But I think the hardest thing was just being insecure and the fear of letting down my platoon and, what I would consider then letting my family down, like my wife and my son, like just that pressure component. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such a, that's awesome you did that, because for those that don't know, that are watching this, and if you've never been a sniper and you never had to sit on a bolt action rifle for long periods of time and then make precision shots, everyone's like, oh, it's super easy. You got these high-end scopes. You got these super nice rifles, high quality ammunition. you go out and zero them, you make sure they're good. It's no problem.
Right.
And I'll never forget the first time I was at basic sniper school, and my partner Ed and I were shooting this steel target, like 500 yards away, which should be easy, right? But when you're first learning, it's a little more difficult.
That's a shot, yeah.
And this guy stands, like I'm laying prone shooting this, and I'd missed a couple times or something. And this guy has an M4 with no red dot, no nothing, just iron sights, stands and like spreads his feet over my torso and hits it like 5 times in a row, semi-automatic. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just remember, I was like, that didn't help me. It just, that literally made me feel about this big. But I mean, it was good for me because it was like, okay, there's just a basic fundamental that I'm not wrapping my head around real quick. And then I recovered.
Yep.
But it's a very, and I didn't mean shooting somebody or staring at someone through your scope and all those Hollywood things that everyone talks about. Right. Just the act of doing it is there's a lot of discipline to it.
Yeah, a lot.
It's a highly disciplined activity.
Yeah, 100%. And the stock lane too has its own component to stalking and not getting caught. Like that proved to be quite a bit more difficult than I thought it would be. Employment is another thing too. So just learning how, because now once you're a sniper, you're kind of your own little element. And so they're going to attach you to a company. And now you're working with the commanding officer for that company, and you're his little direct asset to be able to go where you need to. So then you've got to, so then again, you got to really grow up here, and you've got to be able to brief him on your capabilities, let him know how you can help, what you think would be a good spot to be. How am I going to help keep Marines alive? What can I do to find bad guys and eliminate them? What can I do to provide for surveillance? What do you need from me? And so then the logistics of planning a mission, I think that was probably one of the most beneficial things, coming from Montana and hunting my whole life and shooting like that. It kind of came second nature. Stalking was more difficult, but again, that's also getting down into the bush and having been an elk hunter my whole life, like hunting deer, like that's something that you're familiar with, but actually getting the planning background and all the different things that need to be considered when you're out on an operation, and not having too much weight and having enough ass and knowing where I've got, support coming from, doing call for fire if need be. What are my designated areas of retrieval if I, have to pop smoke and bail on this mission because I've been compromised, of which happens all the time, is a soft or hard compromise. And so then having one deployment under my belt, kind of understanding what combat is now, and then now kind of learning the logistical side of it, and then the lethality of being a sniper, learned quite a bit.
So only 7 months later, when you deploy, do you deploy as a sniper? Yeah. Oh wow, that's it.
And I'm a team leader.
Oh wow.
So I get done with sniper school, and it is important to say, like, I never wanted to be a leader.
Right.
At any of these different junctures, even in boot camp, when I was in boot camp, I got put as a squad leader just because I was able to go through what was called Thunderdome, and I won 3 times in a row. They kept having me come back and like fight because they were enjoying watching me fight the guy, and I won. Didn't want to be a squad leader. They put me. Go to the fleet. Had no intention of being a leader. Obviously, I end up with my 12 Iraqis and 2 Marines, and we're pushing through. Then I go to sniper school. Have no intention of being a team leader, thinking I'm just going to be a guy on a gun. Like, nope, I'm now the team leader for my my sniper team. And the only reason I say that is that you're not always looking, especially in my career or in my life. Leadership just always seemed to fall in my lap, probably out of necessity, need, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But so now I'm back on my second deployment, and now I'm a team leader, and like what you're talking about, fake it till you make it, you know what I mean? Now I've got all these Marines. I've got 4 Marines with me, or 3 Marines with me now. One of them's got a little more experience than I do. Everybody's got experience from Fallujah, and now it's like I'm in charge, fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? And again, like, I got to get home to my parent or to my wife and to my kids.
Is there a lot more autonomy in the sniper role than there is in when you from your first tour? I mean,
yeah, Yeah, 100%. And especially if you establish a good relationship with whoever the CEO of the company that you're supporting, of which I was always really, really fortunate to get to work for, fantastic officers who, would have been captains. And so generally, you get attached, you start supporting, they kind of see what you've got, what you're capable of, and then start giving you the leeway. And I'm just kind of the mindset too, like if we're in country, we're working. And so my team worked really hard and worked a lot, and sometimes to their discouragement of it. But we worked a lot.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot that goes into that, and just being, and it's also worth saying too, God, was this my second deployment? Yeah. We got to Haditha, would have been my second deployment, first as a scout sniper team leader, but 2 sniper teams had just been killed in their hide. And I think it was 10 of them and I don't know if you guys remember this, but they were killed in their hide, drugged through the streets of Haditha. All of their equipment had been stolen, taken. And I mean, there was videos of it leaked out. And so now we're coming back into an area that I would say is really scary, especially for a sniper team.
And that's why and that's exactly why they do that stuff.
Yeah.
It's psychological warfare for you 100%. Guys, because they're just saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to you.
Yeah, 100%. And with that being said, kind of knowing the history of the area that we are in, then it was, for me, I felt that we needed to make sure that we were constantly in the know and reconning and out during, we would be out with patrols during the day, with the line company just embedded in their squads, reconning areas, getting angles, figuring out if I'm in that building, I can see here, this is the area that we've got. We've had a lot of IEDs put in, so I'm going to try to hit that building. You know what I mean? And then later on that night, then come in, move in, take down the house.
Were IEDs always a big concern for you, or did they ramp up during your deployments?
So my first deployment, about halfway through, they started becoming an issue. And then when we got to our second deployment, there was a serious issue, especially in the area that we were. I remember taking a look at the AO, and we were getting the brief on where we were going. And I think it was 825. There was a reserve unit of Marines there before we got there. And, they had a diagram of the different routes and where all the IEDs had gone off, where the IEDs that had gone off had killed people, IEDs that had just been dug up. And so there are just all these dots on this, aerial view up on a PowerPoint, and looking at the hundreds of them, it was,
and it gets
you're like, oh, we're going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it at that time it started becoming an issue.
I remember watching that and learning about it, and I remember thinking, I mean, how fast of a game changer that was.
Yeah. And then how the TTPs for them would change as, my very first combat patrol I was ever on, I received a Purple Heart, actually. I was blown up. I had a 155 artillery round was buried in the ground, and it was 3 feet from me when it detonated.
Wow.
And just boom. If you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, you get the ringing in your ears and the dazed effect, and everything goes quiet, and thought my face had been ripped off. So being familiar with what it feels like to be blown up, now here we are, second deployment, and IEDs everywhere, and the way that they were going about them, the triggers and whatnot, and whether they were victim initiated or if they had a trigger man, all of that stuff kind of evolved into whatever was effective.
Wow.
Until we could counter it, obviously.
Right. So during this deployment, what's different about like your engagement pace and everything else from the first one?
So we end up pushing through, clearing this the city of Haditha. We hit as well, and so we had a reputation at that time too, right? 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, like we were in Fallujah, and having got to speak with the XO for 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines here just recently, and kind of learning some new information about what it was like back then that I wouldn't have been privy to. That as soon as we got in and started kind of using our HET team to make sure that the locals knew that this was Fallujah Marines, right? Which carries weight. Just that notoriety helped push the bad guys away.
Wow.
And then our sniper platoon really did a number on them too as well, and helped to create that fear that then also helped push them out too. And then also all the Marines, you know, Lima, Kilo, India, Weapons Company, just some of the best people I've ever met in my life. You know what I mean? Those guys were just always out. And I want to make sure that it doesn't seem like I'm taking credit for anything, because those guys are on the ground, and we were constantly patrolling. We always had guys out in the streets having a presence and making sure that they knew that we were everywhere. And that really did a lot for us to keep our guys alive. And that's a credit to the leadership that we had at the time and their philosophy as to how to push these bad guys out and how to keep Marines safe. And that's, the whole team, man. The whole team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then transition to talk to me about your, because you did 3 tours. Talk about your 3rd tour.
Yeah. So we get done with that deployment, come back. We've got a year now between our next deployment. So there was some kind of weird shit at that time too for us. Like, I don't know if people remember this or not, but there was a time there where they started doing recalls, like depending on how much time you had on your, because you've got your active duty and then you've got your inactive duty obligations. And so guys started getting called back, right?
I remember that.
And at that time, there were guys actually, so we're in country. We're being told that if we do not extend, right, so that we can hit go past our 4 years to stay and to do this 3rd deployment, right, that we know is out there in the future now. We're in theater. They're talking about this deployment in the future. If we don't extend, then upon returning from our 2nd deployment, you're going to turn right around, fly back to Iraq, and you're going to do another deployment with no time. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of folks at that time, you know, that was like a scary notion. Right. And guys at that time, and again, like you talk about the IEDs and guys getting blown up, and, you know, we were losing quite a few guys at that time. We were fortunate on our 2nd deployment that we didn't lose as many as we did on our 1st one, for sure. But that created some kind of weirdness. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody wanted to come back.
Oh, yeah.
There were guys that were getting lawyers. There were guys that were, doing what they could not to come back. So that created some kind of weirdness for us. But anyway, so we get back, and now I am given the billet of chief scout for the platoon. So now that's my responsibility, the training piece for building up our platoon, recruiting new guys into it, getting them ready to rock and roll. So I spend the next year getting the platoon to TO, getting our team leaders to school, different schools, doing some schools myself. We end up at Bridgeport, the Mountain Warfare Training Center, where I would later actually be an instructor at the Mountain Scout Sniper School. But we're up there doing some training, and so we get ready to rock and roll. We get back into country. This time we float over. We're on the 13th MEU. And I've been telling my wife, for the past year, like, babe, it's going to be okay, because part of that extension piece, right, that I was talking about was that if you extend, right, for this deployment that's a year out, you're just going to be on a boat. You're going to float around and do a Westpac. You're not going to end up in Iraq or Afghanistan. You're just doing more of that presence patrol that the Navy and Marine Corps are known for doing, right, just standard, deployments. So then, with that in mind, I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to extend, babe. It's going to be fine. Like, I'm going to stay in, get these guys trained up. We're going to float around the world. It's going to be great. No problems. That makes her feel better. I'm happy. Kids are happy. Family's happy. I get on the boat, say goodbye. And again, this is the 3rd time now, which really sucks, because I've got 2 kids at this point. I was going to say, yeah, 2 kids. So I've got Addison now too, and she's a little darling. And I get on the boat and find out the next day that we're going straight to Iraq. we're going to Iraq. I can't remember if it went straight to Iraq.
But beeline.
Yeah, you're going to Iraq. I was like, right, okay. And I highlight that story, though, because that was kind of where we were for the Marine Corps that I'm familiar with anyways, is there was some turmoil there, and there were a lot of guys that didn't want to deploy anymore, and we did get lied to, of which, though, however, I do understand the needs of our country, and I'm not trying to sound like a whiner. I'm just giving context for where we were at.
Absolutely.
And so now we're underway. We get into country, and our platoon sergeant has a family emergency, and so he's got to leave. So now I'm the platoon sergeant as well.
Just boom.
So yeah, now I'm like that's a E6 billet. I'm an E5, and so now I'm running a team, chief scout and the platoon sergeant, and doing operations on that third deployment. The third deployment was I don't know. Some of this requires a little bit of back information, but I don't know if you ever remember so 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, we had the killing in the mosque during Fallujah. That ended up on the news. Yep. I don't remember if maybe you remember the Haditha massacre. That ended up on the news, right? And so now at this juncture, they've just stuck us in an area essentially where we can't make a mess. You know what I mean? And so then that third deployment ended up being, for me anyways, and for my teams, a little lower maintenance, we could say. I mean, it still had its nuances and kind of weird stuff, and there was definitely a learning curve to be in that leadership role piece for me, but it was a little bit different than the first two.
So you guys were highly effective at what they told you to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then you get to third deployment, and they're just like, yeah, but it's made the news a couple times.
Yeah, and that's the battalion as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the whole battalion.
Yeah, exactly.
Bunch of warfighters, yeah.
You know, that same thing happens in law enforcement. Hopefully not here locally, but, you know, in these big cities that, you know, and they're kind of woke politics and stuff.
Right.
And you get people who, you know, full-on warriors do a great job. They get in a couple gunfights, and they're like, yeah, you're going to ride a desk for the rest of your career. And it's like, you're going to give up all that experience?
That's so unfortunate.
They were justified. Yeah. They were lawful. They did what... Now, there's sometimes those guys, which, as we transition to talk about the vet program, sometimes those guys are like, I need that. And that's good. Yep. That's okay.
Yep.
We're not talking about that, though. But there's the same thing happens here, where it's like they're afraid that, well, if there's a third news story about this battalion or about this person, it's going to look bad on us. And it's like, justice is justice.
Right.
You know, if it's justified, it's justified. Let's stop worrying about the narrative that some, you know, journalist is going to write. Let's start worrying about what it really is and start telling the truth.
Right.
You know, that's frustrating. So the reason I wanted to kind of spend some time talking about your deployments, which thank you for indulging me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Is so how did you get involved in this Montana vet program? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I get done with my first 3 deployments. My wife and I end up going up to Bridgeport for 4 years or 3.5 years. I'm an instructor there, and now it's time for me to get out, right? So we come home. I was planning on actually going into the Border Patrol. I had some BORTAC special agents up at our Mountain Scout Sniper School, and they had a really sexy job, and I just kind of loved what they were doing. And so I had got through the artificial language test, had done everything that I needed to do, and I get up to Montana with my wife and kids, and now I have 3 kids. Vanny has arrived at that time. Again, she's a darling. And in one day, my plan A turned to plan C because my kids didn't want to leave. You know, like, we're back home, we're around family. We had been gone for 8.5 years, and it felt great to be home. It felt great to be back in Montana. And so in one day, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do Border Patrol no more. I don't know what we're going to do, but the only thing that I have an option to do is school. So I'm going to go to school. We're going to use the GI Bill. I was able to do a work study position that paid minimum wage, but it wasn't taxed. So I started working at the vet center here in town as a work study and started going to school. While I was at the vet center, I got exposed to, I guess that side of things, right? Like we've got individuals with PTSD, got individuals who are coming in with sexual trauma. Not that I had anything to do with any type of counseling. I was just simply the person checking them in, Right. But I got to kind of feel that side of things. And a couple things too, like when I got back, I had, you go and do everything with the VA, get yourself registered and, disabilities and things of that nature, turn in your medical records and get yourself squared away. And so then doing a psychological evaluation with the VA. And I remember going in and at this time in my life, I'm 30 and I'm relatively fired up. You know what I mean? I'm post 3 deployments. I've been training, Marines and all sorts of different organizations on, essentially how to kill people better in the mountains, So I come home and I'm sitting across from a little old man who's wearing his glasses and just like this cliche, sipping a cup of coffee. And he, well, let me hear about your stories. And I hated his approach to how he asked me that. I hated his look, in all honesty. It bothered me that he thought that he rated to hear my stories. It just all pissed me off. And then even when I was at the vet center, it kind of bothered me, the notion that everybody just, we need a counselor and that's going to solve all your problems. Because that in itself is bullshit too, right? As much as I was already talking about having a counselor, it is a 100% important component for some of us. But there are other ways to go about doing this too. You know what I mean?
And it's one thing.
And it's one thing. Yeah.
It's one thing.
And also it's worth stating too, which I've seen multiple counselors in my time, and I've had good ones and I've had bad ones and I've had really good ones. But it never comes up like, hey, what's your diet? How often do you work out?
Right.
What's your sleep like? What do you do for fun in regards to, are you playing video games all the time? Do you just sit on your ass and watch football all weekend long? A lot of these kind of baseline issues that need to be sorted out just simply so that my brain fires the way that it should fire. Mm-hmm. If I'm not taking care of those components, how am I going to get any resolution? Because you're not even, essentially then, the counselor isn't even speaking to me at 100%.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so at that time, I'm going to school, getting my bachelor's degree in psychology, really interested me, and later started my master's degree. And I started the Montana Vet Program as part to, number one, I wanted to start doing something with veterans. I had saw the local group here, Vets for Vets, if you know those guys, Roger McConnell, Billy Garber, Wally McMangle, my father-in-law, he helped with that as well. And so seeing those guys help the veteran population kind of inspired me. My wife had even told me at one time that she felt that my calling was to work with veterans. And so kind of taking all of that, I was really motivated to try to do something. And at that time, veteran suicide was a hot topic. Not that it isn't anymore, but and there's other veteran topics that are, problematic as well.
I remember that though, that period of time around the time frame we're talking, where it really was like, I mean, it wasn't just because it was awareness. There were some high profile suicides that were happening.
Yeah.
That were
and Kill 22 came out, that number started.
Which are horrible.
Yeah, 100%. And so then wanting to do something about it and feeling like I thought that we could. And another component to all this is that my team, right? The team that currently have at the Montana Vet Program, Scott Moss, Brian Gustafson, Joe Miller. But myself, Joe, and Scott had all been together at the Mountain Scout Sniper School together. And so we had been able to decompress for like the last 3.5 years of our career being up in the mountains, rucking around, doing that whole piece. And that in itself kind of served as like a decompression / therapy. Yeah, you know what I mean? So we really kind of learned, and because we were running a schoolhouse, we really learned how that all works and operates, and teaching on different varying topics. And then Scott Moss had come up with the idea to do our pig egg. And so the pig egg, that notion comes from the Marine Corps Scout Sniper community. And generally it's anywhere from 35 to 55 pound sandbag, rock, whatever it may be, that when you're going through either in your platoon or sniper school, you're taking this pig egg and you're putting it on top of all the weight that you've already gotten. The whole intent of the pig egg is to incur suffering, to make it hurt, and to weed you out. Right? We want to see what you got, and if you don't have it, then goodbye. That's the whole intent of the pig egg.
Is that where the whole suffer will kind of
partly
comes
partly
from?
Yeah, a little bit of it.
Yeah, but it's also a play on words for.
But it's and Bill Belichick has a little bit to do with that too. Actually, I'm glad to hit on that if you want. But yeah. So then his idea with the pig egg was, let's create one, but now we're going to fill it with all the dog tags from the men and women who've died in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And currently we're at 7,054 names that are in our pig egg, and each dog tag has the individual's name, their rank, date of death, branch of service, hometown, and operation that they were killed on. We've actually had to scrub that roster twice too, like literally go through every single dog tag to make sure that there are no imperfections and that all the information is correct, right? So we've done that twice. So it's solid. So that component, he came up with that idea, and so then we brought that in. We've got all this experience of being in the mountains. We need this kind of different approach to being able to help individuals get through some of the issues that they'll come back from theater with, right? And so using all of that concept, we came up with the veteran-led therapeutic adventure trips, and that's what we offer, right? Yeah. And so that became the project essentially for my master's degree, and so that really helped me be able to kill two birds with one stone in regards to time management. At that time in my life, I'm actually remodeling our house, going to school, actually framing houses, and so that was a real hectic time in my life. But I say all that to say that that this program developed from what I saw to be a lack in service and something we needed to do, and a different approach for guys to remember, more than anything, remember that you're a warrior.
Right.
Like, just because you get home from, Iraq or Afghanistan doesn't mean that you need to drop your pack and get fat and get lazy and give up on shit and feel bad about yourself. Right.
Right.
And that's important to me, for not only for the veteran, but for the veteran's wife, for the veteran's kids. And this doesn't get talked about that often, but the ripple effect of the Vietnam veteran and what they dealt with, which is a whole nother topic, and it's worth saying, I hold the Vietnam vet in the highest regard because of everything. I personally felt that Vietnam was a bullshit war. They went over and fought it. Was it 58,000?
Yeah.
58,000. Yeah. So to put that into context.
Well, and they had to deal with Jane Fonda.
Yeah. And then come out. And just to put this in context, we have one pig egg with the 7,054. If we were to do this for the Vietnam veteran, we would need 8.26 pig eggs.
Yeah.
Right? The wars roughly spanned about the same amount of time. Further context. If we were to look at Iwo Jima, 36 days, one pig egg.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is relative a little bit later, but for the Vietnam veteran to suffer that conflict, deal with, again, a war that I felt was wrong, and then to come home and be treated like shit, and then to come home and have these psychological issues and have to then create this notion of what post-traumatic stress disorder is, they did all of that. And when we came home, I was treated like a hero every single day. Every single day I was treated like a hero. There's almost a level of notoriety that comes with saying that you're a veteran, that you get respected. I'm so grateful.
As it should be.
Yes, sir. 100. But because of them,
right,
I got to be treated that way out of them being treated like garbage, and it's sad.
It is sad, and I don't and I don't disagree with you about the Vietnam War. I don't. I actually agree with everything you say. But it's also when you have bad history, which we can never hide from.
Right. And
then you learn from it and you do better.
Yeah. 100%. That's evolution.
You do better.
Yeah.
Well, but it is. And I worry sometimes we're not doing that at our point in time in history right now.
Agreed.
But I mean, yes, I agree with you. In those Vietnam War heroes they're amazing, and they had to go through all these hard times so that people appreciated and maybe understood it better.
Yeah.
And wrap their head around it.
Sir.
And so I think that's furthermore, and it also makes you wonder, like, how come we can't learn from stuff like we did from that? Because that was,
Yeah, so you're saying, like, if we didn't have them go through that, like, then we wouldn't be where we're at now. Who knows?
Yeah, they could have that movement. That, I mean, I have nothing wrong with people who are anti-war.
No,
I think that's actually,
we need them.
It's the way people should be.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. War should be something you don't want.
I 100% agree.
But it's not the young soldier's fault. It's not the warrior who's standing on the front line. He takes orders and he goes.
Right.
We got to start looking at our politicians. We're going to look at that stuff. It's not their fault. So when they're forced to go because they're under orders.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of the requirement to live in this country is that you can be drafted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Your choices are you go or basically you stand trial for treason.
Right.
So we got to support them. I mean, they're literally between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
There's no winning.
Yes.
And so
in a really, really scary environment.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously that goes without saying. I mean, it's just.
But the environment's not just scary. The consequences for treason and the consequences for dodging the draft and all that stuff. There's serious consequences for that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And even if you have an objection to why you're going over there and it's valid, which it seems like, after the fact that it was valid, and if we say be honest, like die in your truth, you know what I mean? And like, if I'm being truthful, I don't buy into this war. That's a really hard spot, like you're saying, to be in. And again, the repercussions of it, to be seen as somebody who isn't patriotic, it's this kind of weird spot that you run, this kind of strange juncture that's you have to walk through.
It is a strange spot, but the problem is that patriotism spans many different facets of our life. Everyone wants to put patriotism on soldiers.
Agreed.
Okay, well, what about the politicians that sent them to war?
100%.
What about all those people that elected that stupid politician that sent them to war?
Yeah.
Okay, you're all accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, to be dramatic, they all have blood on their hands when it comes to this. The only people in this whole dichotomy that basically have unforced blood on their hands is the soldier.
Yeah.
Because they're
ironically out of all of that, you're right. And then whatever they have to do in country to keep their brothers alive, right? Spilling blood. And then to come home and be called a baby killer and to be hated on that way.
And what I think we forget so much is that we forget to blame the American people for all this.
Right.
Because they elected the people that made these decisions.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm hoping there's going to start to be more of an awareness. And the reason I bring all this up, and the reason I went down this rabbit trail with you, you got the Montana Vet Program, and you're working with these veterans, and you're trying to help them get through some hard times.
Yeah.
And there are so many different things that could make them suffer. And I don't know how you said something really profound, and I really appreciate that you said this. This old guy sitting across from me with his glasses, sipping on his cup of coffee, tell me your war stories, right?
Right.
And I love that you said, well, I'm really not sure you're qualified to hear my war stories.
Yeah, you don't deserve it.
Why do you get to hear this? And I like that you said that, because the challenge would be, I think, for a lot of these guys, and I can only relate to this because I've gone to counseling in law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
And when I sit across the table and I'm looking at this gal or guy and I'm going, you've never seen or done the things I've seen or had to do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And they're like, well, I'd like you to do this exercise. you just start kind of like coming unraveled, you know? And so I think that's a huge thing, is that everyone would have, this is just my assumption, human nature, let's take having a counseling degree or whatever out of it, is, it's those horrible things that you did. Well, first of all, these soldiers don't do them. Mm-hmm. They're reacting to what's happening to them. And then second of all, they don't even factor in this whole thing we just talked about of the basically like political element that is totally exists. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I've had veterans on here that talk about the abandoning Afghanistan.
Right.
And they weren't even there.
And
they're so infuriated and upset and angry. Like they're just like, and I can see it triggering. So like, they're like, you know, how much does that stuff infuriate people and create them to suffer? So where I want to go with all this is the stuff that you guys are doing for all these veterans. Talk to me real quick. Like, it's way more complicated than people think as far as what people are suffering with when they're dealing with these issues.
Yeah. Well, so everything that you just said, but then there's also what did you bring to the military before you ever even joined? Because we all have.
Very true.
I hate the word trauma, but I get it, and I understand the utility of using the word. However, everybody experiences life, and sometimes there's hard times, and sometimes there's not. And not everybody has the same amount of hard times versus good times. Some people have more hard versus good. Some people have other good. And then that good versus hard is relative to the perspective of the individual who is looking at that person's situation. True. You know what I mean? So sometimes you need hardship in order for you to express the best you. You know what I mean? And so then it's hard to judge what is right, wrong, what's good, bad. You know what I mean? But it is a component that needs to be considered, that not everybody goes to war, comes back as a psycho, or comes back, you know, you already had some stuff. Yeah. And now maybe it's amplified to a degree. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the notion that it seems like, from my experience, is that PTSD, okay, that's now something that you have to identify with, right? That's your problem. You can go ahead and be one of the crazy vets now, or, you know, one of these vets who will commonly state, well, you weren't there, so you wouldn't know, right? None of that is productive, right? I personally don't think that you have to be with this PTSD disorder for your entire life, right?
Agreed.
And then, and then it's also worth me saying too that I am not the Vietnam veteran during the Tet Offensive that in one night I mow down 400 VC as they're trying to take on, you know, overrun our camp. Like, I am not responsible for taking that amount of life ever in my career.
Right.
So it's understandable to see that maybe there's a degree here of what the individuals have had to take on. Absolutely. Right? That's also relative. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so for some guys and gals, that extreme fear that they've felt at some point in their life, or guilt, or whatever, bloodthirst, whatever it may be, some of these things that maybe come from this, some of that stuff has to be somewhat factored into this. And I'm not saying that everybody is cookie cutter going to be the same case. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. And so when I say that I think that you can get through PTSD, I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm saying that, understanding that there is, again, a spectrum in that element too. You know what I mean?
But I agree with you. Like, I hear people say, well, PTSD is, I've even heard people say, professional people, it's a disease. I've even heard people say that. And I'm like, no, it's not.
That's bullshit.
You didn't catch it.
No, I don't agree with that.
I don't either.
No.
But I think maybe like you could, and I wouldn't even put a timetable on it by saying temporary, but it's just a condition. Right. It's a condition that your life is in at a certain period of time.
Yes.
And you can, you if you were born in some serious childhood trauma, you could have kind of been born into it, but most likely not. And then you can come out of it, and then you can go into it again.
Sure.
Or you could have, like we were talking about, you could have an event happen in your life, and then you see something on the news, and it's like, oh, feeling that again.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like.
Yep.
You know, but I think that you're totally right. It's not a permanent thing. Right. It's I get really, really upset when people call it a mental illness.
Yeah, I agree.
I get infuriated.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it almost to me seems like a propaganda political way to take anybody who's ever to do hard things to protect our country and serve, or even just to protect their family, right, and demonize them for doing that.
Or make them the victim,
yeah,
and allow them like to get to use that and claim, again, titles that we jump on to, and now Absolutely. You've got a mental health issue. Like, and then it seems like mental health always kind of comes with this maybe secondary notion that, you know, you're stuck with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, like when we're saying mental illness is like you don't get through that, and I don't agree with that. And when it comes to PTSD, Eric Kettering was the team leader at Helena Vet Center for some time, and he always said that he felt that PTSD was evolution, right? And, you know, I commonly will ask team, you know, our guys when we're out there, is that once you've been to combat, and once you've, maybe not even combat, but once you've done something really hard or even been in theater, right, you do develop a bit of a heightened awareness.
Absolutely.
Right? You know, and I asked them, would you give that away?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Like, even times on base, sometimes when things get kind of scary.
Right.
I have seen what other people do when they're scared, and comparing myself to them, it's not the same thing that I experience anymore. I'm not saying that I'm not afraid. Mm-hmm. I am afraid, but it doesn't control me the way that it controls other people that I'm watching. And that's an important factor, is that if you've been out fighting wolves, right, to protect the sheep because you're the sheepdog, you have to be capable of violence too.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you're always being violent, and you can hang out with the sheep and mingle with them and you're fine. But when a wolf comes near, you can then embrace that sheepdog mentality piece and you can suit up. So would you ever give that away? Do you want to be a sheep again?
Yeah,
I've never heard anyone ever say to me that they wish they were a sheep again.
Absolutely not.
You know what I mean? And so that's the perspective change, though, that we're always talking about on our trips is, and I see it this way, is that if you're sitting here and I'm taking fire from a bunker and we're just staying in the same position, we're just trading rounds, and you're slowly wearing me down, I'm slowly wearing you down. If I could just shift my position just 5-10 degrees, I can get a new angle at that problem and start dropping rounds on it too. A different perspective on the problem changes the opportunity for you to knock it out of the park. When these guys come with us, just giving perspective for different ways to look at PTSD. Like, you can even look at it as post-traumatic stress growth, right? I've heard that used before. Like, instead of this disorder, it's this evolution of you. And yeah, with it comes some crazy shit. I was watching Sean Ryan podcast the other day. I'm not sure if you...
Oh, yeah. Watch it.
I love Sean Ryan.
Watch it religiously.
Yeah. And he was talking to Colonel John Alexander the other day, of which is a bad, bad man. What a great, like, a patriot with how many years of incredible service, starting in Vietnam. And he said the other day, which I thought was interesting, they started talking about Vietnam, and he started talking about how when he has conversations, the dreams will come back. I don't know if you saw that episode or not.
I haven't seen it yet, no.
Okay, it's great. But he starts talking about how things do come back to him now. Once you open that box, like, because you were talking earlier about being like, rating, maybe a little heavier on the spectrum of psychopath, being able to compartmentalize and push things away and put them where they need to be because they're no longer relevant.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm no longer in a combat zone now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when I go into a restaurant and maybe I don't have my back facing against the wall, I'm taking a risk that I'm willing to take because I live in America. And maybe just by the mere chance that somebody comes in with a gun and shoots me in the back of the head, I'm just willing to take it. Yeah. I'm over it now.
Right.
You know what I mean? However, there was a time in my life that I did need to make sure that I did that. And I was able to transition, grow through that. Point that I'm getting at is that even with him, his experience, the length of time that it has been since Vietnam, is that you said it earlier, these things will creep back up. And those dreams come back. I have dreams, and they're always weird, like really, really weird dreams, and they are relative to the military, and sometimes my time in Iraq, sometimes my time in space. You know what I mean? Who knows what the dream is? And they wake you up feeling away. Great. Do you know how to get yourself centered again?
Right.
Do you know how to calm your emotions back down so that then that dream isn't in charge of you all day long? Because you're letting it be in charge of you all day long. And when you claim the victim mentality, you're already in a negative. You're at a disadvantage.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
If I'm the victim, then I'm letting whatever disorder, whatever problem this is, it's already winning.
It's dictating what I get to do.
100%.
Yep.
And that's not the truth.
No.
Every single person can choose the thoughts that come through their head. And it's not easy. And none of us have been taught to do it.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has.
It's really hard.
And everybody, even if you're not suffering from PTS growth.
Right.
Because I like that.
Yeah.
Even if you're not suffering from that or whatever, everybody has obtrusive thoughts.
Yes.
That consume them.
Yeah.
And they have to find a way to get through them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. That's just life.
Yeah.
And I really like what you just said. I really do, because I had this thing happen to me. So back when I was a city police officer, I'd been in a gun battle early in my career, done SWAT team stuff. But then late in my career, I got into working internet crimes against children. So I'm hunting predators all the time. Right. And that got to be a little wonky.
Yeah.
I never suffered from quote unquote PTSD. I did have a few moments of hard times, but they were hard times because I chose.
Right.
I made a choice. I said, okay, listen, I can let this define me, or I can get through this. And it it involved counseling. It involved a lot of different things. But I was always like this. Until I decided to run for sheriff, I was never, ever, ever going to quit that fight of protecting kids. Right. You couldn't have pried me out of the crowbar. You couldn't have done it, because I'm like, every day I wake up, I got purpose. I know what I got to go do.
Yeah.
And I believe in this. And believing in what you do is so important.
Yeah.
So I'm transitioning to the whole sheriff thing. I'm actually running for sheriff back in 18, probably right after I met you, because it was like May of 18. And I'm going to this big debate, and it's like I think it was live on KRTV.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
And I'm driving in the car, and my wife's sitting next to me, and I'm nervous. And I'm really good about controlling my nerves, but my wife can tell. And she's like, "Are you nervous?" And I want to lie. Right? At this point, I want to totally lie, and I want to be like, no, I'm not. Well, it was really outside my comfort zone, right? I mean, this is like politics and debate and things like that. This is not cop work. This is, and so take a deep breath. And I said, yeah, I'm nervous. And in one moment, my wife rocked my world, totally rocked my world. It was the simplest thing. She put her hand on my leg and she said, good, it's important.
Right.
And I was like, oh, and it totally stripped all the power away from being nervous.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh yeah, it's my body preparing me for something that's important to me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I went in and crushed the debate. I was just like on fire. I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember leaving, and I was like, and she just took this I mean, I could have become a victim to that whole moment.
Yeah.
I could have said, I'm just overwhelmed and I'm scared and I'm not going to do very well. I could have had all those thoughts of darkness come in on me. And in one moment, she just says, okay, good, it's important. And I often think about that when I think about PTS growth.
Yeah.
As we go, I got to get used to that. PTSG.
PTSG, yeah.
So I got to think about that when I think about that all the time, because you're right. Because it's like, there's a lot of good that can come out of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Your body, like when you understand what heightened sense of awareness is, and you can see everybody's hands in the room and everybody's moving in slow motion, and you're like, well, why is everyone moving in slow motion? It's just your body saying, I am totally aware of everything happening in this room, and I've got you covered.
Yeah.
It's totally okay.
Yeah.
But some people will panic, and they'll be like, oh, everything's moving in slow motion. It's freaking me out. I'm hallucinating. No. And what's weird is ever since I had the slow motion effect during an incident, ever since then, when I get that, I'm like, okay, pay attention. Something's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every time, something of violence occurs.
Right.
I mean, I've literally been sitting at intersections before, and I see a car coming through the intersection, and it's going like super slow, and I'm like, why is that car going so slow? And then a car comes in and T-bones it. Totally unrelated to it.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect me, but my mind just told me, Now, what happened, I'm sure, is my brain captured all that information, but I got fixated on one part.
Yeah.
So it went slow.
But it's still useful to you in
Totally
that moment.
useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you start doing things like, is my seatbelt on? Brace yourself, get ready, maybe put it,
Yeah.
you just start doing work because you feel like you have time.
Yep.
And I think I love what you said. And sorry, I expanded on it for a lot, but I really wanted to touch on it because I think you're right. I think there's so many things out of having a post-traumatic stress issue or experience that you can go, oh, wait, what can I learn from that? What can I take from that?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. If you love a farm-to-table experience as much as I do, then you have to go to the Roadhouse Diner. The local McCafferty Ranch beef served on every burger. Try my personal favorite, Death by Bacon, today. Central Avenue Meats gets their beef and pork exclusively from a local producer, McCafferty Ranch. Go see them at 422 Central Avenue in Great Falls, and always support your local rancher. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems in Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems in Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. So talk to me. So how does a veteran out there get involved in the Montana Vet Program? Like what, you're out there in the universe,
yeah,
doing your thing. And do you have to be a resident of Montana?
No. In fact, we've had vets come from Florida, Boston, Mexico City, Midwest, Washington. Yeah, we've all over the place.
So what do? They reach out to you, or is that?
Well, yeah, and this has kind of been the evolution of MVP, and I like to call MVP like the micro brew of veteran nonprofits.
Okay.
Like we're homegrown, started from the bottom, don't have any grants, don't have a big sponsor yet. Hint, hint. But in the past, it was just word of mouth, really, more than anything, and just beating the streets and getting out and driving around, getting to the local vet centers, going to the VA, talking with people, letting them know what we do, convincing people that, again, we're talking about frauds, right? When we first started with this, it was like convincing people to come with us and experience it. And, we haven't had grants in the past because we didn't have data. We didn't have numbers of people who had been with us. So that makes getting a grant pretty challenging, right, as well as getting sponsors because you haven't done anything yet. So it's like I've got this concept. My team and I have this concept. We know it'll work. So come with us. And so for the longest time, we've just been, doing our best, certain kind of like synchronicities. Sometimes people line up and end up hearing about us and then calling us and showing up and then telling their friends. And we always have such positive remarks and effects when individuals come with us, is that then they go home and let veterans know kind of what their experience was, and that has helped pull people to us. We used to do the Knuckle Buster Obstacle Challenge as well. That helped us spread the word a little bit about it.
Now you're no longer doing that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So last year was our last year that we did it. We did it for 4 years, had a break for COVID, did it at multiple locations and had fantastic, again, leadership, right? And just like, hey team, here we go. Let's go figure this out.
Right.
We've never done an obstacle course race before, but we're just going to go throw it. And we even had to change locations, get up to Showdown. And it's been a fantastic time getting to do that and put that on for the public. And working with Showdown and Bobby Glico, and just an incredible time to see what we've got. You know what I mean? Like in regards to like what can we achieve together. And we always had such positive remarks from people who came and ran our race and just positive experiences. And so I'll forever be grateful for everybody who helped with that and who came and ran the event with us. And I know that we left an impact on them, but because we're at this juncture where, because of Brian Gustafson, he came on a trip with us last year and has stayed with us since then. He's taken over our social media and really helped that blow up, that now we're at this point where we're getting 5 veterans a month. I mean, I've never experienced this kind of growth before with MVP. And so now we're having and working on building the infrastructure for what we've got going so that we can continue the work that we've got and make sure that the individuals who come through our trips are, kept up with. And so that takes a lot of work.
Absolutely does.
Everybody who's helping with MVP has a full-time job. Right. Like I said, I'm the director of the fitness center on Malmstrom Air Force Base. That's 40 hours a week. That's what I'm dealing with my staff of 13, and then I get done with that, and then it's MVP stuff. And so the whole goal for us is to have this become our full-time job because we believe in it so passionately. But right now, it seems that the social media piece is working best for us.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
so if there's a veteran out there and they're like, hey, I want to go experience what MVP has to offer, and they're like, I'm super interested. Do they have to pay?
No.
Okay, so they just have to like get here.
They just got So we say get to Great Falls and we'll take care of the rest, right?
Wow.
And we've worked with other nonprofits in the past to help cover flights, and that is our goal in the future. We 100% want to be able to get to that point where we can cover the cost of a flight as well. But currently, get to Great Falls and we're going to take care of the rest. And what we point people towards our website, so vetprogram.org. They can go to our website, go through the portal, the application portal.
And we have it here. We'll share a link on the
perfect.
on here for you.
Yeah, beautiful. So then they go through the application process piece, and then they get put on one of our trips. And we do currently 4 trips per year. We do 2 on the Smith River, which has been a fantastic capability and opportunity for us to be able to get to work with the state, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as well as Forest Service, and be able to work this conservation aspect of our trips into. And I can go into that here a little bit more. And then we also have our hikes that we do. And we use the Bob Marshall. We've been the Absarokas. We've been kind of all over the crazies. Wow. But the Bob seems to have magical skies. Let's just say that. But yeah, so if they want to come with us on a trip, go through the website, get through the application portal. Amy, our administrative specialist, she'll reach back out to you, get everything lined up. Then they fly out here. We have all the equipment.
Okay. That was my next question.
Yeah.
Do they have to bring all their stuff?
Nope. So that's one thing that's kind of cool and that we learned at the school that we taught at, is having the equipment for people. And that kind of serves twofold. Number one, we make sure that people have everything that they need, because frequently we have people come and tell us that they know what they're doing in the backcountry, and we've had that bite us in the ass before, So making sure that they have everything that they need, but then also getting exposed to modern camping kit, right?
Yeah.
And equipment. Like, things have changed, and you don't need to eat MREs. You don't need to use Alice Ruck,
What?
right?
You don't? Oh.
Yeah. So being able to kind of expose them to that piece, use our kit, because ultimately what we want to have happen from this is that you come with us, we're going to expose you to a bunch of stuff. But when it comes to how to be proficient in the backcountry, be safe in the backcountry, use the kit that's important, we want you to be able to take that home, and then you can buy your kit, start building it up. You can start taking your kids. You can start doing this with your wife. And we've seen that with veterans in the past, because we take it for granted, especially in Montana. Montanans take Montana for granted.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I think is...
I would agree.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
I say that knowing full well that
I'm too. We're busy, right? You're just So everyone who comes here from out of state, right? They're on vacation, so they're just like they're going and experience. Yeah, wow, this is great.
Yeah,
and
Jurassic Park, man.
And we're like TPS reports and emails and kids and
it's like, that's the front. Yeah, we can see it from our office.
Yeah, we drive by it all the time.
Yeah. So when you do get individuals who come from, let's say, Nebraska, I mean, they're just awestruck by the beauty. And Montana Vet Program, Montana itself is a character.
Absolutely.
It's a part of this equation that is.
Oh yeah.
It was like, I always kind of equate it to when.
Well, it is the last best place.
It is the last best place, and I genuinely.
Yeah, I do too.
Believe that wholeheartedly.
I used to not understand that. When I was a kid growing up in school,
right?
I was just like, whatever. And I'll tell you, I thought it was. Don't get me wrong. As an adult, I I believed it, but man, COVID and coming out of COVID, I all of a sudden learned. I was like, oh, this is the prophet of the last best place. This is the thing.
It really is a special place, man. Montana is. Let's just say it's worth fighting for. Montana is special.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it deserves and requires stewardship.
Very much.
Right. And
and constant attention.
And constant attention for the people that live in it, as well as the state itself. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And and that's another thing too, like the people that live here is something that's worth considering too. Like, most of us, a lot of us who are from the area are probably descendants of some pretty crazy people that were willing to move up into this area, scratch out a living running cattle, of which I personally believe that the cattle ranchers in Montana are the hardest working people on the planet.
Amen.
I genuinely and I have family and friends, and the level of respect that I have for real cowboys. I don't wear cowboy boots simply for that reason.
Oh yeah.
I just
Really?
it's kind of a
I do because I'm a sheriff.
yeah. Well, yeah, that works. Yeah.
And I already admitted that sometimes I feel like a fraud anyway, so that's why I just roll with it.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
But no, I agree with you. No, I totally agree with you. No, I think that some of the hardest working, and that's our food.
Yeah.
I mean, I am like a straight up carnivore food person.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm a predator.
Yeah, I am
meat,
too.
Yeah.
And especially beef.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody who tells you beef's bad for you, you're wrong. It's not bad for you. It's very, very good for you. And it tastes amazingly good.
Yeah. I personally eat a lot of elk steak.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that's fine.
I like a lot of elk and bison too. Yeah. I mix in that too. Absolutely.
Yeah. But when anybody ever tries to tell me that elk is better than beef, like I've heard on multiple, podcasts before, like people talking about how delicious elk is. Yes, it's delicious, but it's not better than beef.
So I'll caveat that a little bit. I sometimes like elk burger better than beef burger.
Okay.
I don't know why, but sometimes I do.
Right.
But my favorite is bison burger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes maybe it depends on the meat. I mean, yeah, we're talking elk steaks and ribeyes. It's ribeyes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, when it comes to a ribeye, man, I personally don't think there's anything better than a ribeye.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so to return to what we were talking about, like Montana is the biggest therapeutic portion of the Montana vet program. And like I commonly say for individuals who are with us, is that when you're in the backcountry, and now I'm going to go hippie on you, there's a level of frequency of energy back there, whether it's light, whether it's the color, whether it's the sound, whether it's the algorithms that naturally occur from birds chirping and wind blowing through leaves and water rippling down the river. That speaks to the primal part of your brain, and it 100% soothes and calms you. That
Absolutely.
Alone in itself, it is so important. In the fact that there are other countries, I think it's Japan, South Korea, that they have begun building parks on top of buildings where they have vegetation growing out of everything so that people can be around that color, around that frequency, around that sound. It really is. And so when we say veteran-led therapeutic adventure trips, the only official therapy is absolutely coming from what has been proven empirically to be in nature, So,
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that's like if I fall out of a boat into water, I can't help but get wet. When you're in the backcountry, you can't help but have this experience, this effect on the primal part of your brain. And so a couple things kind of that are cool that happen from that. Number one, you decompress, right? There's some really cool physiological things that happen. White blood cells go up. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff out there that happens to your body. But then when you're out there with a group of like-minded individuals, your walls come down. You've relaxed, right? And when you're suffering together, right? Because our rucks are, around 45 to 55 pounds. Everybody's, and this is probably worth talking about. We take our 75-pound pig egg, which has all the dog tags, and we divide it up amongst the entire team. And so everybody gets to carry a component of the pig egg. And so you're carrying then the dead with us, right? For our brothers and sisters who gave their lives in service of their country, right? And you get to carry that with you. And at the end of the night, end of the day, each night we go ahead and we assemble the pig egg back and put it back together, and we build a platform, a podium for it, and it has this sacred space with us, right? So with that suffering piece, because it adds weight to your pack, right? So it's a challenge, and we hike generally around 35 miles is the total when we're hiking. Right now, 60 miles is the total of our Smith River float. But at the end of each day, you've worn yourself out, you're in nature, you're around people that speak a common language, and it allows individuals, especially once the campfire kicks up, it allows individuals to talk about those things that we were talking about earlier, especially for males, those emotional components. And some of this is where our team is special, and we help guide these, and we have little exercises and lectures that we talk about different components, again, with that the intent to change perspective. But it allows for those individuals to talk about things that a lot of times are considered off limits, or that they wouldn't feel comfortable to talk about. And because we're isolated in the middle of nowhere,
right,
nobody's going to hear it, right? And so it allows that freedom of space and movement when it comes to, some of these things that weigh heavily on vets.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a fantastic model. And I think I think one of the key components of it is wearing somebody out too.
Agreed.
Like just wearing them out, because your guard goes down real fast when someone grinds you out.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to fight it, but I don't think I know I'm very aware of this, but it's only because I'm one of those people who tries to fight, sometimes being honest about how I really think about things or whatever. But you get me tired, and all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, I don't care anymore. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And then also they probably feel better because they're getting vitamin D.
Yeah.
They're getting grounded, right? Because they're not standing on concrete.
Yeah.
And if you hike like I hike, my shoes are off when I get to the campfire. They're not on my feet anymore.
Yep, that's right.
So you're like getting grounded with the earth. You're becoming, and I mean, you said I'm getting hippie on you, and I said this before in another podcast. I miss the hippies, man. They had so many things right.
They did, 100%.
And
there's so much that was correct.
I mean, the hippie culture, there's so many, being connected with the earth, all that stuff. I mean, that's what God intended. He intended us to have a relationship with the earth.
Agreed.
And
100%.
It's what centers us. It's what pulls us around. It's what makes our head right. So no, that's a really good model. I'm also curious on, is there a limit of participants that you'll take on these excursions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now we do 12 participants, and generally we're anywhere from 3 to 4 team leaders with us as well. So the team leaders are always going on the trips, but 12 boat spaces is what we have available.
12 boat spaces.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And so my question also too is for your team leaders, are they all people who participated in the program and then became leaders? Okay.
Or are founders, right? Okay. The original founders, or are currently still going on trips with us. Really? And then there's also a component here too, like, one, not everybody can be a team leader because not everybody has there is an empathy component that is required here, right? And there's a piece here where you have to be able to share your story too, right? Like if I'm, again, going back to leadership, and I'm not implying here that I want anyone to come on these trips and share anything. There's no type kumbaya or you tell me your PTSD story, you tell me your story. There's none of that shit, right? It's born organically of the conversations that happen out there, but there is special skills that come along with being able to help individuals get to the point where they feel comfortable with sharing and talking about some things. And that requires then also that you share some things. You know what I mean? Like if I want you to talk about or consider this different perspective, well, let me tell you about myself and the things that I've experienced. And maybe that relates to you. And maybe you never say anything about it to me while we're on the trip. That's great, whatever. But maybe that resonates with you 2, 3, 4 months down the road, and that has an impact. You know what I mean? So it does require that we are selective with the guys and gals who are team leaders for us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I could really see that. That's why I asked the question. It also sounds too like, I mean, you're not going to bring a bunch of people out there that can't relate to these individuals.
Well,
you're not going to,
Yeah, 100%, right? Like there's a little bit of credibility that is required for this too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? If you're going to go,
it's back to the old guy with the glasses, sipping
100%. Tell me your war stories. There is credibility that is important, and again, that's kind of showing the example. But you've also walked the walk too, a little bit.
Absolutely.
So fortunately, we have some just really, really talented team leaders and guys and gals that are good at doing just that and making you feel comfortable. And that's a piece of it too. When you're in the backcountry and feeling comfortable. And ironically, when I was kind of formulating and putting this all together, and the team and I never counted on laughter. You know what I mean? Like, It was just like, let's go back. We're going to suffer well, and we're going to get through this. And we're going to kick ass. And, I just never thought about the impact that laughter would have. But I will tell you that I can see. At this point, I've done 16 of these trips, right? We've done 16 trips. We've helped 126 veterans. We've covered 742 miles. Every time day one starts, everybody comes to the program or wherever we're meeting. Everybody's a little bit stiff, a little standoffish, right? They kind of sizing each other up, day one type stuff. But by day two, the majority of everybody has let down their guard, and somewhere there has been some type of first sergeant joke or some type of funny thing that happens, and everybody just starts laughing. And then from that laughter kick off these side stories and this dark humor that exists in this space that you're completely familiar with.
It's totally real.
Yep. And I always equate it to, be careful when you stumble up to come up to a table full of nurses at a bar, because when they start telling jokes about losing their watch and somebody's wrecked them that day,
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some dark humor in there, and not everybody, I will go back to this, not everybody deserves to hear it, and not everybody can relate to it, and they might see it as one thing when it's really not,
I liked it. Like, not everyone deserves to hear it. I like that.
Yeah.
That's true.
And from that laughter, man, I mean, that just grows. It's infectious, and you've seen the movie Monsters Incorporated, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the premise of the movie is obviously the monster's going to go through the closets, and they're going to scare the shit out of kids, and they're going to charge their batteries. Well, then at the very last scene, right, they go through, and this is where Mike makes his, they stumble onto his talent where he makes the child laugh, and from that laughter, the battery explodes. You know what I mean? And in this kind of time when it seems like fear is constantly what is on the news and what kind of drives so much stuff, it really is unfortunate, but it really is kind of the background for a lot of stuff is fear. Laughter is so much more powerful, is so much more healing, and generates such a better energy for everybody around them that I'm telling you, when day 4 comes, day 1, everybody is stiff. Day 2, everybody starts opening up. By day 3, everybody is sad that the trip is going to leave, that the trip is almost done. Like, day 3 is really where the magic happens, because everybody's had their ass kicked up to this point. Everybody knows that day 4 is the last day, and they're sad that they have to leave. And we get to really talk about some cool stuff. But day 4, everybody knows that the trip is over. And when we check back in to give our gear back, the drastic difference in body language, energy, laughter is completely tangible. I mean, you have these individuals 3 days prior didn't know who each other was. On this day, they're giving hugs. They're like tearing up. They don't want to say goodbye. And I'm part of this. Like, I'm literally like one of the people who's like sad and tearing up and. Because always day 1, I'm just like, God, I don't want to do this. Jesus Christ, I got to go. God damn it. Yep. But by day 4, I'm just so sad to see everybody go and to see what the love and what the camaraderie and what the suffering has generated. And it is absolutely 100% love for one another. And that love for one another, those people leave changed. They're affected.
I've often thought about this, though, like, I think that's one of the messed up things that we do with our warriors and our people is like they go off and they fight together, and this is totally unrealistic, so just bear with me. But in a way, they should come home and they should be like all together with their families again. Mm-hmm. And they shouldn't be spread across the country.
Right.
And you see this like certain military groups, and especially some of the special forces groups and different things, they all live in communities together.
Right.
They have little communities together, like in North Carolina, where it's all a bunch of like whatever Army Rangers or Navy SEALs, and they all live like in this little gated community together.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I'm curious, like, what was the psychology of that? How does it add up over years? Because if you're around those people, you don't feel isolated. You don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're going through stuff alone. And if you have to transition out, but you're still around them, does that make? I've often wondered about that. It's like, why do we do all this? And I mean, and I get it's unrealistic because they've got wives, they've got kids, they've got families, and then their wives or husbands or whatever, they have families, and that's why they live in these locations. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's all these reasons why you do it, but it's one of those things that I've thought about before, and you kind of confirmed what I was thinking. Is it sounds like they have a real desire to, like, okay, I want to be back together with my brothers and sisters, and I want to, you know, bond, and that's what really matters to me. Yeah,
yeah. The integration process for warriors back into peacetime warriors, right? And that's one of the things that we talk about pretty frequently is, you know, just that, being a warrior in peacetime. We don't have that right yet, but I think we're getting there. You know what I mean? I think that we're starting to get to that piece where there is that reintegration, and I think that we're learning the power of love. I mean, I'm sorry, but these trips really boil down to that one factor is like.
Well, but also you talked about loving yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
like getting your butt in the gym.
Yeah,
getting your body right so your mind's right.
Yeah,
but then also while you're in the gym, taking care of yourself. Now, guess what? You just built yourself back into that warrior, or you remained that warrior. You never left. You know that never left you. Yeah, you know. So you're. Okay, I'm capable. Because I think, aren't we all scared that someday we're not going to be dangerous as a man? Like, that's like a big fear.
That's a great way to say that. I agree 100%. And we should let that fear motivate us to be better, right? And the other piece I'll add to that is to be dangerous is virtuous, number one. Right, not saying that you go out and be dangerous, but you can be dangerous. Well, is virtue.
You have to be capable.
100%. And then if you do, I consider myself someone who cares about America. I love the United States of America, and I know that these are strange times. I'm willing to stay here and help fix it. You know what I mean? I love Montana very much. I care about the next generation. And I say that because if you do care about the next generation, then you should be making yourself the best you that you can be so that your kids can get the best you that you are, so that they can be the best them, so that we can have the best country, because those bright sparks of energy and positivity are going to go out there and continue letting America be as fantastic as it is. So if you want to be a patriot, and if you consider yourself a warrior, then pick your shit up and let's go. Right. Because you're not done yet. And if you're sitting on the couch complaining and whining, are you out working out? Are you out making sure that you get the most amount of sleep that you need every night? Are you eating healthy? Are you teaching your kids to eat healthy? And this comes on the heels that we are over 1/3 of our country is obese. Our children are going that rate as well. And that's also me not ignoring the sociological issues or socioeconomical parallels that go with that. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that too. I don't necessarily put it all on the individual. Now, that might run counter to what some people say, but if I grew up and my parents, because I grew up in the 80s too, when Mountain Dew first popped off and Doritos really popped off, and I fueled my body on that stuff too because nobody told me not to. I thought it was great. But if I grow up in that era thinking that that's what food is and the industry is giving me that and they make it really cheap so that I can afford it, and I then continue passing that on to my children, I can't personally say that that's all the individual's fault. But there does come a point where we do have to enlighten ourselves. And once we do identify, and this is, again, is part of wisdom, is once I do identify that is leading me down the wrong path, as unfortunate as it is, it's your job to go correct it. Yeah. Go fix it.
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah. And it's hard. I mean, it is so hard. And you have to have, you have to have the discipline and everything to do it. But when you can wrap your head around it, your mind is so much more healthy. And I love that, because we kind of come full circle in this conversation, because that's how we started.
Right. We
kind of started with, well, what are all these other underlying symptoms that you're having?
Right.
And some of the underlying symptoms are really easy. You don't eat very good. You don't work out. You're struggling, and everyone wants to turn it into, oh, well, they've got this health issue or health. I mean, I look at my dad, for example. Gosh, you haven't seen him lately, but he's in like really good shape now.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in really good shape.
And how old is he?
He's probably he's in his 70s. He's like 73.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And he was 70 years old when he got in shape.
Yeah.
And he got in phenomenal shape.
Right.
And he's not stopping. And he likes the way it makes him feel. And I've noticed he's a little bit more calm. He's a little bit more peaceful. Yeah. You start to see it. It starts to come out. Yeah, and he's 70 years old, and he can pull it off. Yep. And so, you're right, though. That's a key component. So I want to ask you, before we wrap up here, I want to know this, because how do we help you? Like, you're out there on this mission. You're trying to raise this money to run this program. Like, do you guys have a financial goal where you want to be, and how do we help you get there?
We absolutely have a goal. So our goal is to increase the amount of trips that we're doing every year, right? Okay. So right now we do our 4 trips. We're helping around 50 to 60 veterans a year. We want to at least double that to where we can be doing more trips through the summer, fall, spring, and then also even doing the wintertime trips, because that's a whole nother level of suck. But
yeah, it is.
But there is something really actually cool being able to survive, live, and thrive, in a state that's covered in snow 4 months of the year plus. It is really important. And having paid staff, and what we are looking for currently, because we just went away with our KBOC, is, donations help, 100% sponsorship helps. Anybody who wants to get involved with us and see us continue putting out the product that we do, because we believe in it wholeheartedly. And we're just looking for help in that capacity. So
besides your website, the MT Vet program, that is hard to say because you want to say MTV. MTVetprogram.org. You guys have Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. Yeah, on Instagram and Facebook.
What's your little Instagram?
For Instagram, it's at 406 MVP.
Okay.
And then for Facebook, it's at MVP 406. So just reversed.
All right. You got any other social media or anything?
Currently, no. That's it.
Okay. So there's also 406-868-7850. They can call.
Yep.
And get information on that. So you guys want to raise money to take care of more veterans. Totally worthy cause. Talk to me, do you guys have I know you're working social media hard.
Yep.
And stuff like that. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about you want to get to millions of dollars type of thing so you can really, really do more stuff? Do you want to grow this outside of Montana? What's your vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to be the most impactful veteran nonprofit in the state of Montana. And when I say impactful, meaning that individuals come through our program and they leave changed in a positive way. And that is going to require millions, to be able to have a full paid staff who gets the training that we need to get trained up on, to have the equipment, to have the building, right, to have the administrative piece, the background, to be able to have the infrastructure, to be able to continue and reach out and communicate with the individuals who do come through our program. And I think that this is important to continue the relationship with individuals who have come through our trips, to see if the impact stays with them, right? You know, whether it's a week later, it's 3 months, a year later, and being able to have that follow-up piece with them is really important. And so, yeah, it does take a lot of money to do that. And I know that there are other nonprofits out there that are, you know, raising money, and there's a lot of us. I think I heard somewhere the other day that somewhere like 40,000 veteran nonprofits that are out there.
Wow.
Which is great. And everybody's kind of got their own niche. But we're going to be some of the ones that, the last standing ones, you know what I mean? Something that we can continue. We start here in Montana, and yes, 100%. If there are states that want to replicate this and do what we've done, and maybe you have the Idaho vet program, that would be fantastic, right? As long as veterans are improving, then we're winning.
Absolutely.
Right. And so,
absolutely.
But yeah, it is going to require, we need help 100%. You know what I mean? And again, when we've got our team leaders who are, you know, busting their asses at their job primarily, and then we're getting to focus on this, third of the time, a fraction of the time.
And then you're having to take time off of your job.
And then take time off.
To go serve.
Yeah.
And do this. And I see where you're coming from.
Well, and some of the stuff too, we haven't really talked on this, is just some of the things that we are teaching, you know, the veterans out there. Like, for example, we love to do cold water immersion, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in the backcountry, and it's 8:00 in the morning, and we're going to go climb into that cold ass river, right? And that just terrifies everybody, right? But the physical and psychological benefits of cold water exposure, I mean, they're huge, right?
Oh, yeah.
You talked about grounding earlier, and the effects of grounding, and now we're starting to actually see products that are.
I've got a cold plunge right there in my shop.
I got one just like that. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And man, talk about flow state. If you can wake up and just kill your inner bitch, as Joe Rogan says, and climb into that every morning for 2 minutes, your day is amazing.
Oh,
it's an amazing day.
Changes your focus.
And the reason I bring that stuff up is that we need to continue our training piece and be able to train people below us so that they can take out veterans in the future. Right. And there's a very, very good chance that this won't be the last war.
Yeah.
And for the next one, when we have men and women coming home,
absolutely,
I want to have a program that's going to help them do exactly what we talked about, because I do care about this country, and I do care about this state, and I do care about the next generation. And if we want them to be as good, and if we really want America to keep being great, then let's start taking care of ourselves first, and helping these men and women get to that place where they're a warrior in peacetime as well. And I'm telling you, that positive effect will ripple through the generations, and we want those people to be prominent figures. And
how strong is our country going to be when, you know, you can't kick our ass overseas? And by the way, all the veterans that came home are still true warriors. They're still ready to go.
Damn right.
You can't touch us.
We're
unstoppable.
And when you're a warrior still, your kids become little lions. And I tell that to my kids every day before we leave. Like, we are lions. Like, that is the motto. My kids know that. Like, we scream it every morning to them. And my kids are lions. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
For them to go out into the world and make their way and take on challenges. And I mean, I don't know what's more honorable than, there's nothing more honorable than being a mom or a dad, number one.
Yeah.
But to come home and to have a product with your name on it that is your children that are going to go out there and crush life, man. Like, I get passionate about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's awesome.
I don't know.
I totally agree. It's the hardest job. First of all, being a parent is the hardest job you'll ever do.
Yes.
It is every leadership principle that's ever taught anywhere will get crushed by your children.
Yeah. and
they will test it and crushed it.
And it's like constant pressure on you. Like it never.
Oh yeah. You don't get to go home at 5 and check
up.
out and go, okay, give me a minute.
Yeah. And about the time that you get done with the toddler phase, and you're like, God, I'm so glad that I'm through that. Now you have like younger middle-aged, children, and then you get into the teenage years, and then even your kids move out of the house, and that kind of comes with its whole.
I'm in the full gamut right now. I have a 4-year-old, I have a 16-year-old, and I have an 18-year-old that's moved out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it never ends. And it's, so when you say constant pressure, I've got a big spectrum, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hard. So no, I totally grab it. Well, Luke, I super happy you came on. Anything that we can do to support you, we're going to do. I hope you know that. And I mean that, like, if there's anything that we can ever do, me personally, the podcast, whatever, we will totally do it. I really believe in what you're doing. And now that I've had a chance to sit down and talk to you, I really believe in what you're saying. I really do.
Thanks, man.
I mean, I don't necessarily sit down and talk to people and be like, oh yeah, I agree.
Right.
And I do. And you've got the total right idea. I learned a ton.
Yeah, right on.
I really did. I learned a ton, and I really appreciate your story, and I appreciate your passion for what you do. And the world needs more Luke Uricks out there. God bless you, man.
We're going to get after it. So
all right.
Thank you.
God bless
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Take
Jesse.
care, man. Hey, everybody. Jesse Slaughter with the Pursuit Podcast. And we really appreciate the amazing support already that this channel has received. Our social media is blowing up. Everywhere we look, people are liking and clicking and commenting. But what we really need you to do is subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Spotify. That's what drives this channel. That's what's going to keep this channel going forever. Tim and Ben are behind the scenes doing tireless editing, working on this to make this come out the way it does, this high quality product that it is. So please go in there, click subscribe, click follow, and make sure that this channel sticks around for a long time, because we truly believe it's doing a lot of great things for our community. But there's many, many other people out there who we need to support. So follow and subscribe today. Thank you.